Hey friends, before we dive into tonight's story, did you know that nearly 80% of the people who watch these videos aren't subscribed? If you're enjoying this kind of content, consider hitting the subscribe button. It really helps a lot, and it keeps these long stories going. Also, I'd love to hear from you. What time is it right now where you are, and which city are you listening from tonight? And if these stories help you sleep, feel free to tap the thanks button to support the channel. It truly means a lot. All right, let's get into it. I pressed the button on the door and slipped inside before the glass could close. The intercom above me crackled once and then fell silent, leaving only the faint hum of the fluorescent lights. The beam of my flashlight pierced the darkness, illuminating peeling pastel-colored wallpaper and a shiny linoleum floor. Each step echoed as if the long hallway were listening. Central. This is Holloway. I'm at Maplewood Manor. No sign of Thornton in the lounge. Start searching the building. I kept my voice steady, even though my stomach had tightened the moment I crossed the threshold, code 2, but I'd had code 3 calls that were calmer than this. Rosa came toward me from the nurse's station, her face pale in the bright light. She pointed to the CCTV monitor, which was flickering between static and a single image, a dark silhouette floating along the east wing. No one was on duty there, she stammered. The cameras, they're malfunctioning. We heard a scream, then nothing. I nodded, took my flashlight in one hand and placed the other on my service weapon. Show me the east wing, I said. On the floor, plan on the wall, the east wing was marked as long abandoned. A wing that had been built decades ago to accommodate overcrowding and then, when money ran out, left to decay. There were no active rooms and no staff there. The perfect place for cable faults, or something worse. We walked through the wide lobby, past the nurse's station with its half-open drawers and unlabeled pill bottles from which amber-colored pellets fell onto the desk. In the corner, an old TV muttered black and white static. No sound, just the ghost of an old sitcom laugh track that had stopped mid-laugh. I swallowed. They never turn it off? Rosa shrugged. Maintenance says it's too expensive to fix, so it stays on. I stepped through the double doors into the east corridor. The neon tubes flickered violently, bathing the hallway in an eerie, pulsating light. The beam of my flashlight danced across the broken windows on the opposite wall, which only faced the hospital courtyard. It was a moonless night, and the panes reflected only the darkness. "Stay here," I said to Rosa. She nodded with trembling lips. I pressed the button on my radio. "Backup, ETA 2 minutes. I'm securing the east corridor." My boots made a soft sound as I walked forward. The air smelled of cleaning products and something slightly metallic, like old blood. I stopped in front of a half-open side door marked storage room. Inside, medical supplies were scattered everywhere. Empty gloves, gauze bandages, empty IV bags. The mop bucket was overturned, water pooled on the floor, reflecting the strobe lights in shimmering waves. I crouched down and shone my flashlight into the standing water. Tiny footprints, barefoot, from an old woman, marred the surface, but there were no traces of mud. The footprints led away to the end of the hallway. I stood up, my heart beating faster. "Rosa," I whispered into my radio, "do you see that?" Noise. Then her voice, crackling. Yes, footprints, but no source. They just end." I followed the tracks to the back door, a fire exit with a narrow window. Through the window, I saw a small vestibule and darkness beyond. I tried the handle. It was locked. I pressed my face against the glass. On the other side, I saw her, Mrs. Thornton, leaning against the wall, her pale hair surrounding her like a halo. She swayed slowly back and forth, murmuring, "He's here. He's watching me. I knocked on the glass. "Ma'am, can you hear me? This is Officer Holloway." She didn't move. I pressed the emergency release lever, and the door sprang open with a pneumatic hiss. The temperature dropped as I entered, and my breath formed little clouds. She was sitting on the concrete floor, her legs drawn up, staring at the empty wall. "Mrs. Thornton." I crouched down. Her head snapped around, her eyes wide and staring at me, black holes. She whispered, "You shouldn't have come." I reached for her arm. Her skin was ice cold. "We need to get you back into the room." She shook her head. "He'll follow us." The last syllable trembled. "He never stops." Behind me, the lights in the hallway went out. I shone my flashlight. In the beam of light, I saw it, a figure emerging from the shadows. I fired once. The shot echoed off the walls, but the figure dissolved like smoke in the darkness. Thornton screamed softly and hoarsely. I picked her up, half dragged her, half carried her back through the door. The footprints ended at the threshold, as if something had disappeared at that line. Rosa rushed over. "Are you okay?" She took Thornton and wrapped her in a blanket. I stepped back into the wing alone. The lights were back on. The static laughter from the TV started up again as if nothing had happened. I looked around the hallway again. No sign of him. Just the mop bucket, the vanished footprints, and the distant squeak of the freight elevator wheels. I radioed headquarters. "Person in custody. No sign of the suspect. Recommend a full search of the building and a review of the cameras. I'll be right back." As I turned to leave, I noticed something. A single word had been written on the dusty linoleum floor with a finger, "Think." I swallowed hard. Then I stepped back into the lobby and closed the double doors behind me. The intercom crackled above me. For a moment, I thought I heard that whisper again. "Shh." I put my flashlight in my pocket. The mansion was quiet. Too quiet. I drove away from Maplewood Manor with my heart pounding so loudly that I thought it would break the steering wheel. The patrol car's engine was idling, its soft hum a poor substitute for the steady buzz of the neon lights I had left behind. I breathed shallowly and quickly, fogging up the window even though the heater was on full blast. Mrs. Thornton sat in the back seat, wrapped in a thin hospital blanket, her body shaking like a leaf in a storm. Behind me, Rosa's taillights disappeared into the night and then were gone. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror, almost expecting to see that pale figure, nurse's uniform, hollow eyes, sitting on the parcel shelf, watching me. Of course, there was nothing there. Just the empty seat, the folds of the blanket, and Mrs. Thornton's large, frightened eyes reflecting the light from the ceiling lamp. "Officer Holloway?" Her voice trembled. "Did you see him?" I swallowed. My throat felt constricted. He wasn't real, ma'am. It was just..." I searched for words. "Just your imagination. You're safe now." She shook her head. "No, he was there. He whispered. He said he would always be watching me." I glanced in the rearview mirror again. The rear window showed nothing but the dark road and my car's headlights. "You're safe," I repeated. But even as I said it, I knew I didn't believe it. We reached the emergency room of the hospital wing attached to Maplewood Manor. Paramedics rushed over, placed Mrs. Thornton on a stretcher, checked her vital signs, and murmured soothing words. She stared motionless at the ceiling panels as she was wheeled inside. I stepped aside and made notes on my report pad. Victim shows signs of acute shock. Reports seeing an apparition. No physical injuries except hypothermia. Standard case, except that nothing about it was standard. Inside, the hospital corridor was bright, sterile, and full of life. Nurses and doctors walked by in immaculate scrubs, unaware of the horror that had unfolded just a few feet away. I felt as if I had stepped through a veil, leaving one reality and entering another. I went to the nurse's station and knocked on the plexiglass window. A young nurse looked up, blinked, and then directed me to the psychiatric ward. I nodded and slipped away. Back in the patrol car, I sat there for a long time with the engine off. The night was quiet. My radio lay silent in its cradle. I wanted to call headquarters to ask for backup, to ask someone to tell me that I had imagined it all. But what would I have said? I saw a ghost while responding to an emergency call. Then they would have sent a psychiatric unit instead of a patrol car. I leaned back and closed my eyes. The scream still echoed in my ears, shrill, primal. The image of the nurse emerging from the closet, how her lips pressed silently against the beam of my flashlight. I was shaking. I had shot at him, or at something, but the shot had left only silence behind. No body, no blood, no sign that anyone had even been there. Just a stain of fear on the walls. I started the engine and drove onto Route 37. The road ran straight and empty into the night, flanked by oak trees and the occasional silhouette of a farmhouse. I turned up the heat, but it did little to ward off the cold that was seeping into my bones. I considered calling my partner, Corporal James Mercer, but he was off tonight and probably at home with his wife and baby. Better not wake him up with ghost stories. Better keep this to myself in the darkness. Halfway home, my cell phone vibrated. A text message from headquarters. Officer Holloway, please submit your 911 report by the end of your shift. Incident number Isipsa Daisy Seon Beigasibisil. I typed a quick reply. On it. Then I pulled over to the side of the road, opened my laptop holder, and began typing in the facts. Time of call, location, emergency services, condition of victim, no suspect found. In the report field, I hesitated at the line, no suspect. Should I mention the figure under the bed, the footprints in the mop water, or stick to the rules? Unknown person, possibly responsible. I typed, officer observed unknown person in East Wing. Person fled before contact. No physical evidence found. It sounded hollow. I saved and submitted the report. As I turned into my driveway, the first rays of dawn appeared gray in the sky. I turned off the engine and sat there for a moment, staring at the house. My wife, Karen, would soon get up and get our son ready for kindergarten. A normal morning. I wondered if I should go inside, hug them both, and tell them everything was okay. But I didn't move. Instead, I got out and opened the trunk. I took out the single pink slipper, Mrs. Thornton's counterpart, which I had taken from the hallway, and held it in the palm of my hand. The lining was damp and still cool. I pressed it to my face. It smelled faintly of lavender and mold. I put it back in the trunk, slammed it shut, and went into the house. The house was quiet, the sun shining through the curtains. On the counter was a cup with the rest of last night's coffee. I turned on my cell phone. No new messages. I put it on silent. In the bathroom mirror, I looked at my face. Dark circles under my eyes, stubble. A wrinkle between my eyebrows that hadn't been there last week. I splashed water on my face, straightened my tie, and went out. At the station, the morning briefing was already underway. Sergeant Patel looked up and nodded at me. Rough night? I forced a smile. Routine disturbance. I put down my gear and grabbed a fresh cup of coffee. Everyone else exchanged stories. A DUI, a stolen car, a dispute between neighbors over a fence. I sipped my coffee and kept my eyes forward. I didn't mention the whispering. I didn't mention the footprints. I didn't mention the slipper in my trunk. By mid-morning, I was back at my desk, doing paperwork for the mansion call. I attached the still image from the security camera, the one with the dark figure, and saved it under unknown person. My computer beeped, and a warning message appeared. The recordings from the East Wing had been overwritten overnight. The facility manager called. "I'm sorry, officer, the system automatically deletes the recordings after 24 hours. There's nothing we can recover." I frowned. "Are you sure nothing is saved? Backups?" He hesitated. We store backups outside the building, but only for critical areas. The East Wing wasn't on the list. I'm sorry." I closed the file. No video, no footprints, no witnesses except Mrs. Thornton, whose memory ended with the scream. Just me and my report. That afternoon, I drove past Maplewood Manor again. I told myself it was a coincidence. I had something to do in the area. But when I saw the outline of the building through the trees, I turned off the road. The parking lot was empty. The front doors were locked. I pressed my face against the window. Dark lobby, neatly arranged chairs, the TV still flickering. I pressed the doorbell. Nothing. The doors remained locked. I drove to the entrance of the East Wing. Same locked door, same broken doorbell. I put my hand on the metal. The air felt colder here. My breath formed mist. I blinked, and in the mist I thought I saw a figure standing directly behind the window. Tall, uniformed, face covered. I flinched. When I looked again, there was nothing to be seen. I backed away, my heart racing. I tried the door handle again, locked. I pushed myself away and walked back to my patrol car. As I got closer, I saw something lying on the ground. Another pink slipper, identical to the one in my trunk, lying in the gravel. I bent down and picked it up. It was dry, clean, no dirt, no wear, like new. I was shaking. I dropped it and looked back at the door. The window was dark, no movement. I got into the patrol car, locked the doors, and sat there for a long time. The slipper was lying on the passenger seat. I reached for it, picked it up, and held it tight. My name, Denise, was written inside in faded blue pen. My heart skipped a beat. I turned it over. Under the sole, scratched into the rubber, was one word: watch. The patrol car's engine started when I turned the ignition key. I raced out of the parking lot, the tires spraying gravel. The mansion disappeared in my rearview mirrors, silent and empty. But I knew it wasn't empty. Not really. I didn't sleep that night. The sheets felt too soft, too safe. I sat at my kitchen table under a single lamp, the pink slipper on the table like a challenge. My radio was silent. The clock ticked. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those hollow eyes, the flashing hallway lights, the word think scrawled in dust, and now watch carved into rubber. At 2:17 in the morning, my radio crackled. Not the dispatch center. A whisper, so soft I almost didn't hear it. "Officer Holloway." My hand reached for the gun at my hip. "Who's there?" Static. Then the whisper again. "Shh, watch." The line was dead. The lamp flickered. I was alone. I wasn't sleeping. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the slipper on the gravel in front of the East Wing door. Denise, scribbled in faded blue ink, with watch carved underneath. I sat at the kitchen table and stared at it in the harsh light of the ceiling lamp. The clock on the microwave ticked past 3 a.m. The whisper from the radio, "Shh, watch out," echoed in my head as if the station hadn't gone off, but was lodged inside me. I reached for my service pistol and ran my thumb over the grip. According to protocol, I should have reported the transmission malfunction and asked IT to check the radio connections. But the protocol hadn't warned me about apparitions or phantom slippers. I put the pink slipper in an evidence bag and sealed it. At least I had photographed it and made a report. The morning passed in a whirlwind of coffee and paperwork. The slipper lay in my locker under a plastic card, exhibit number 24-1127A. I left it there when I went on patrol. Around noon, I answered routine calls, suspicious vehicle, barking dog, neighborhood dispute over loud music. And every time I reached for my radio, I almost expected to hear that soft voice again. Instead, radio traffic, nothing else. At 2 p.m., the phone on my desk buzzed. It was Rosa. She spoke so softly that I almost didn't hear her words. "Officer Holloway, you need to get back to Maplewood Manor. There's been another incident." My heart sank. What happened? They found another slipper in the closet in the East Wing. I grabbed my jacket and keys and left before she could finish speaking. In the patrol car, I reflexively pressed the siren. Code 3, full speed to the manor. My thoughts raced. Another missing resident. Another scream. Or had someone broken in to leave a message? When I arrived, the sun was just setting, bathing the brick facade of the mansion in a blood-red light. 2 patrol cars and an ambulance were parked under the canopy. Yellow police tape fluttered on the pillars. I ducked underneath it and went to the nurse's station. Rosa was standing there with red eyes. "They found it in the closet where you saw the footprints," she said. "Same size, same style, but new, clean." She led me down the hallway. The door to the East Wing was sealed with tape. We entered. The neon lights flickered, even though the caretakers claimed to have replaced all the bulbs. I sensed the same metallic smell in the air and smelled lavender. I turned on my flashlight. The door to the storage room was open. Inside, there was nothing but cleaning supplies, mops, disinfectant, empty boxes. On the floor, against the back wall, lay the second slipper, identical to the first. I knelt down and shone my flashlight on it. The lining was immaculate, with no signs of wear. In the dim light, the pink fluff looked almost unnatural, like plastic. I radioed headquarters. 23 to headquarters. "Evidence found in the East Wing. Please send forensics." My voice sounded hollow. Rosa was standing behind me. I put the slipper in a plastic bag and placed it in my evidence bag. Then I noticed fresh scratch marks on the back wall of the cabinet. Horizontal scratches at the height of a crouching person. I ran my finger over them, notches in the wood under a layer of peeling paint. Not old, new. I shone my flashlight upward. In the corner where the ceiling met the wall, a dark spot, like soot, formed a rough arrow pointing toward the hallway. I swallowed. I turned to Rosa. "Did you see that?" Her face turned pale. "No," she swallowed. "We have to secure that." We went back. I ordered a thorough search of the East Wing while the technicians examined the closet. As I waited, I went over the events of the previous night again. The footprints in the mop water, the figure at the fire door, Mrs. Thornton's whisper, the shot that missed its mark. Every detail now felt heavier, full of meaning. Someone, or something, was leaving messages. That evening, I sat in the break room looking at the photos from the crime scene on my laptop. Photo 1, the slipper in the closet. Photo 2, scratch marks on the wall. Photo 3, a close-up of the notches. They formed a letter. J, or was it an L? I turned the image. The scratches looked more like an L written backwards, a backwards L. Denise was written on the lining of the slipper. D, a backwards L, D-L. My badge number? My initials? It didn't make sense. I closed the laptop and rubbed my temples. An old soap opera was playing without sound in the break room. The exaggerated facial expressions of the actors made me nervous. A janitor pushed a cart past the window. He glanced inside, startled, when he saw me and hurried on. At 10 p.m., the call came in. Unit 23, disturbance at Maplewood Manor. Reinforcements needed. My pulse quickened. "On my way," I said. I got into the patrol car and turned on the blue lights. The drive there seemed surreal. The lights flashing red and blue between the trees, the road rushing by beneath me. I went over my briefing. Second slipper found, drag marks, no suspect, possible supernatural involvement. I shook my head. Would anyone believe me? Better to stick to the facts, missing resident, secure evidence, no witnesses except the staff. When I arrived, chaos reigned in the lobby. The staff stood around the reception desk with wide eyes. Paramedics rolled out a stretcher. A nurse approached me. "Officer? Holloway, thank God. It's Mr. Caldwell. He collapsed after screaming that someone was watching him." Mr. Caldwell was a 90-year-old World War II veteran, normally stoic. He had been found in room 214, pressed against the window, his eyes darting wildly. He was babbling something about the observer in the hallway. Then he grabbed his chest and collapsed. I climbed the stairs 2 steps at a time. The door to room 214 was open. Caldwell was lying on the bed, pale and breathing shallowly. I checked the window, locked, no signs of forced entry. The room was tidy, a Bible on the bedside table, a photo of his late wife, a half-empty glass of water. The intercom speaker hissed once, then, "Watch!" I stepped back. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. I jumped toward the door and froze. On the floor, at the foot of Caldwell's bed, lay a third slipper. Men's size, dark blue. I knelt down, scuffed leather as if it had been worn. Underneath, more letters were scratched into the sole. E, and then an arrow pointing down the hallway. My radio crackled. "Backup is here," said Rosa's voice. I nodded and stood up. "We have to search everything, now." We spread out. The western hallway was silent. Nothing could be heard except our footsteps. We searched every room. Nothing. No one was crouching in the closets, no footprints, no signs of a struggle. At the end of the hallway was the fire door. I shone my flashlight through the narrow window. It was dark behind it. I tried the handle. It was locked. Then I heard it. A soft scratching sound, like fingernails on metal, coming from the other side. I pressed my ear against the door. "Who's there?" I whispered. Silence. Then a whisper in my ear. "Look down." I stumbled backwards. Rosa was next to me. "What's going on?" I looked at the floor. Letters had been scratched into the linoleum. D-L-E-T-H. I blinked. It said "Bleth." One letter was missing to spell death. The third slipper had been pointing in that direction. The arrow had been scratched under the sole of Caldwell's slipper. A cold shiver ran down my spine. I radioed headquarters. 23 to headquarters. Crime scene techs, paramedics, hazardous materials team. Everything you've got. We have multiple incidents, multiple slippers, carved messages. Possible serial killer. Headquarters responded with a flurry of confirmations. I ended the call and turned to Rosa. Her face was ashen. "We're not alone," I said. She shook her head. "We have to cordon everything off." I agreed. I took out my cell phone and took a photo of the message. Then I stepped back, my heart pounding, and I felt the hallway tilt. The neon lights flickered above me. The intercom crackled one last time. A brief hiss, then a child's laughter, high and hollow. I spun around. The hallway was empty. The laughter echoed again, then faded away. I radioed for backup, maybe a K-9 team. Anything to find out who or what was here. While we waited, I examined the slippers in my evidence bag. Pink, blue, and now 2 more. One in the closet, one next to Caldwell's bed. Each had a name or a scribble on it. Think, beware, and now death. The pattern was clear and terrifying. The technicians arrived and began photographing the floor. the slippers and the scribbles. I stepped aside and held my cell phone to my ear. I dialed home. Karen answered, sounding sleepy. "Denise, is everything okay?" I forced a laugh. "I'm just working late. I might not be home until after midnight." She hesitated. "Be careful." "I will." I hung up and looked back into the hallway. The blue slipper lay under the forensic tent. The scratches on the wall formed an upside-down L. The message read DEATH with the A missing. The first word, think. The second, look. The third, death. I took a deep breath. "Rosa, this is a pattern. We have to find the next message before it's too late." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "What should we do?" I squared my shoulders. "We keep looking, we keep listening, and we don't leave until we find him." Behind me, the intercom crackled again. A whisper, so soft I almost missed it. "Soon." I drew my gun. The hallway lights grew brighter again. The whispering stopped, but I knew it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I stepped into the darkness, flashlight and gun at the ready, prepared for anything that might come. The mansion sighed around me as if relieved that I had returned. I swallowed hard. The next slipper might already be waiting. I pushed deeper into the flickering corridor of the east wing, all my senses on high alert. Rosa stayed close behind me, her flashlight beam trembling over the warped linoleum and peeling pastel walls. Forensics had sealed off the storage room and Caldwell's room. Now we were alone in this half-forgotten part of Maplewood Manor, the place where reality was unraveling. My boots made soft slapping sounds. Every step seemed amplified in the stale air. The message, "Dleth," almost death, hung behind me like a promise. I glanced at Rosa. Her jaw was clenched, and she swallowed hard. "Anything on the cameras yet?" I whispered. She shook her head. "The cameras in the East Wing still aren't working properly, just static, and that one image with the silhouette." I nodded. We had to search every room, every closet. The next slipper could be waiting for us. We proceeded methodically. The first door on the left, an unused living room. Old armchairs stood in front of an empty wall. Last month's tabloids lay in a dusty magazine rack. I shone my flashlight across the floor. No slipper, no scribbles. Next door, the linen closet. Fresh bedding, towels unopened. I searched through the piles. Nothing. The air smelled of detergent and decay. At the end of the hallway there was a fork. The left hallway led to locked maintenance rooms, the right back to the lobby. I consulted my mental map. The slippers had first appeared in the storage room near the lobby, then in room 214. The pattern seemed to be spreading inward. Now we were deeper inside. This fork was a decision. Back to safety or push further into the heart of the wing. I decided on the latter. We turned right into the narrower side corridor. The lighting was even worse here. Some lamps had failed. Others flickered so quickly that they created a strobe-like effect. The beam of my flashlight traced a narrow tunnel. In the silence, Rosa's breathing could be heard. We passed one empty room after another. All the doors were locked, and the silence weighed heavily on us. Then a door opened a crack. Light streamed out. I raised my gun and moved forward cautiously. "Police!" I shouted. "Anyone there? Show yourself." No answer. I pushed the door open. It swung inward into a small office. The social worker's office, I recognized. The desk was overturned. Family photos lay broken on the floor. A chair was on its side. The intercom on the wall hung loose, the wires exposed. I looked around the room. Under the desk, I spotted something pink. I knelt down, a fourth slipper, identical to the first, made of the same fluffy pink fabric. The lining was smeared with dust. and someone had written a word in the neat block letters. Sleep. My heart was pounding. Think, beware, death, sleep. 4 words, 4 slippers. The pattern was clear, a twisted phrase. Think, beware, death, sleep. Or maybe a warning. Think, beware, before death sleeps. Or the number of victims. 4 so far. Thornton, Caldwell, 2. Who else? And now someone, or something, was demanding sleep. I put the slipper in a bag. Rosa took photos. I felt the weight of every moment. The overturned desk, the broken photos of smiling families, the intercom cables hanging down like severed tongues. The whisper of that voice seemed imminent. I turned to leave and froze. On the opposite wall were 2 words written in what looked like grease or soot. Wake up. They were smeared, as if someone had tried to wipe them away. Beneath them, faint scratches formed another letter. R. Now the message read, Wake up, R, room, resident, rescue. My radio crackled alarmingly loud. Unit 23, we have movement on camera 3 in the hallway. I'm on my way, I said, my heart pounding. We ran back into the hallway. At the spot where the camera was mounted, a crossroads directly in front of the office, a small monitor on the wall was flashing. Then, for a moment, a silhouette appeared. Hunched over, uniformed, face covered. It turned around and seemed to look directly at us. Then it was gone. Rosa and I looked at each other. He's mocking us, she whispered, or he's testing us, I said, to see if we'll follow him. The hallway led to a staircase that descended to the utility tunnels in the basement. The silhouette was pointing in that direction. We approached the staircase door. It was locked. A heavy metal door with a small barred window. I peered through it. Darkness. I knocked on the door. Police! Open up! No answer. I tried the handle. It gave way. I radioed for backup to break down the door. While we waited, I shone my flashlight through the grill. At the other end of the stairwell, I saw something move. A tuft of white hair. A slipper? I took a deep breath. Back up, we need to get to the stairwell in the basement east wing. There may be someone in there. While we waited, I examined the door. Letters were scratched into the paint. S-L-E-E-P. Again. Someone had scratched the word into the door. Rosa shone her flashlight higher. Another, almost invisible scribble. Don't sleep. My radio crackled. Unit 23, we're breaking in now. The door gave way. We entered, weapons at the ready. The stairs led down into darkness. I descended, each step echoing on the metal grating. Rosa followed me. The air grew colder, more humid. Water dripped from the pipes above us. There was a strong smell of mold. Halfway down, my flashlight caught something on the steps. Footprints in the dust. Barefoot, small, the size of an old woman's, but here, on the concrete stairs. They led down, and then back up, as if someone had been walking up and down the stairwell. At the end of the stairwell, the tunnel stretched into the darkness. Pipes ran along the ceiling. Supply cables hung down in loops. The beam of light from the flashlight danced across the walls, revealing peeling paint and spray-painted numbers. 1953, 1978, 2002. Years. All of them were crossed out. Then 2025. I swallowed. Someone had kept track of time here, counted years, counted incidents. Behind me, I heard a soft scratching sound. I spun around. Rosa's beam of light hit nothing. Then a figure appeared at the other end, a nurse's uniform, a pale face, sunken eyes. He stood motionless under a single flickering light bulb. I raised my weapon. "Show yourself." He tilted his head. Then he pointed to the tunnel floor. We approached cautiously. Another slipper lay on the concrete, dark blue, just like Caldwell's. Next to it were letters scribbled, AND, and an arrow pointing further into the depths. I got goosebumps. "And," I whispered. Rosa's voice trembled in my radio. "Officer, behind you." I spun around. The figure had come closer, just outside the beam of my flashlight. I fired. The shot echoed. The figure dissolved. No body, just a wave in the air. I turned back to the slipper. Under its sole was another word, sleep. But this time the letters had been crossed out so that it read, "and sleep." The complete sentence was, think, watch, die, sleep, and sleep. Or perhaps, think, watch, die, and sleep. My radio buzzed, reinforcements at the top of the stairs. Rosa and I retreated and blocked the staircase with the barrier tape. We stepped out into the hallway. The mansion was silent. The lights in the hallway hummed. I looked at Rosa. "They want us to sleep," I said. She shook her head. "But we can't." I nodded. "We'll keep going." We collected the slippers. There were 5 of them now. Each one had a word on it. Think, observe, death, sleep, and. The letters could be rearranged, think, observe, and sleep, death. Or maybe the last sentence was think, observe, death, and sleep. A command. After death comes sleep. I shuddered. "We have to warn the staff," I said. "Cover the shifts. No one should be alone." Rosa agreed. She reported the incident. I updated the log. Multiple pieces of evidence secured, break-in in the basement, suspect not cited, possibly paranormal. But I knew this wasn't about ghost stories. Someone, or something, was orchestrating the whole thing and leaving clues in slippers and scribbled warnings. We were in the middle of a twisted game, and the mansion was the game board. I didn't go home that night. I sat in my patrol car in front of the mansion, engine running, watching the dark windows. The 5 slippers lay in evidence bags on the passenger seat. I stared at them. Pink, blue, blue. A pattern based on gender, on residence, or just random? At 2:45 a.m., my radio crackled again. It wasn't headquarters. A whispering voice. "You should be sleeping." I grabbed the microphone. "This is Officer Holloway. Identify yourself." Static. Then one last whisper. "Soon." The lights in the mansion flickered. A silhouette flitted past an upper window and paused to watch. Then it disappeared. I sat there frozen. The game was far from over. The patrol car stood beneath the barred windows of the east wing of Maplewood Manor, its engine humming softly in the silence of dawn. I sat behind the wheel, my heart pounding. 5 evidence bags lying on the passenger seat, each containing a slipper with a word written on it. Think, look, death, sleep, and. The words formed a fragmentary sentence. Think, look, death, sleep, and. There was more to come. The whisper over the radio, "You should sleep," had not been a request, but a threat. I closed my eyes for a moment, pressed my forehead against the steering wheel, and let the adrenaline subside just enough to feel the cold in my bones. Rosa's patrol car was next to mine, lights off. Through the windshield I could see her silhouette hunched over the steering wheel, looking just as tense as I felt. We had agreed that none of us would go home until this was over. We didn't trust quiet rooms and locked doors. Not after last night. I opened the driver's door. Cold air rushed in, smelling of damp concrete and mold. I stepped onto the cracked asphalt, my boots echoing against the building's facade. Rosa got out and joined me. "We have 2 hours until sunrise," I said. "After that, the surveillance cameras could be turned back on. We only have one chance to follow the suspect's trail." She nodded and held the flashlight in her hand. "Where to now?" I pointed to the sealed stairwell door. "We're breaking in again. The slippers led us there last time." The message, "Don't sleep," was carved into the door. We saw movement through the peephole. We need to get deeper into the service tunnels. She swallowed. I'll call the technicians to get the stairwell opened again. We need all our equipment, breathing apparatus, extra lamps, radios. I pressed my radio. Headquarters, this is Unit 23. Request a hazardous materials escort to the basement tunnels of the east wing of Maplewood Manor. 2 officers, full protective gear immediately. There was static. Then, Roger, Unit 23, arriving in 5 minutes. We paced silently. I ran my fingers over the bag labeled "and." What did that mean? The words weren't chronological actions, but statements. Think, observe, death, sleep, and. The last word waited in the tunnels. The next slipper could be the key. 2 technical vehicles arrived. 2 uniformed technicians rolled up a cart with full-body suits, respirators, spare flashlights, and wired communication devices. We got dressed. The process in the airlock was clinical. Gloves were put on, masks sealed, communication headsets tested. My uniform went under the suit, my ID and weapon over it. It felt absurd and reassuring. A police presence under a protective shell. As we approached the stairwell door, the technicians cut the tape and pushed the door open. The hinges squeaked. Behind it lay only darkness. A single bare light bulb flickered above us. We stepped over the threshold. The stairs led down 5 floors, each landing colder and damp than the last. Water dripped into the darkness. Dates were scrawled on the walls. 1953, 1978, 2002, 2025. Now someone had added today's date in fresh charcoal, May 2nd, 2025. Below, it was another word, alone, scribbled sharply. Below that was an arrow pointing down. I radioed in a tense voice. May 2nd carved into the wall, the word alone, arrow pointing down. A technician took photos. Rosa's beam shone on the scratches. The other technician nodded. Someone may be marking their territory. We reached the basement, a low tunnel where old pipes hummed. The beam of my flashlight caught dust particles, then a dark figure glided around a corner. I raised my weapon. "Police, show yourself." No answer. Only the dripping of water and the distant clanging of metal. We continued on. The tunnel branched off. The walls of the left branch were inscribed with more dates, while the right branch was blank. The slippers had led us into the narrower branch last time. We took it again. After 5 meters, Rosa's light fell on footprints in the dust. Bare, small, the size of an old woman's. They led deeper into the tunnel and then back. In the middle lay a slipper, dark blue, older than the others, worn out. The technician packed it away. I knelt down and shone my flashlight on the sole. This time, there was no writing on it, just an arrow pointing forward. We continued on. The tunnel led downwards. The air grew colder, the humidity turning to cold. My breath fogged up my breathing mask. I smelled something else. Decay, rot, something that vaguely smelled like lavender. At the end of the tunnel, a larger chamber opened up, an abandoned boiler room. Massive pipes snaked along the ceiling, valves frozen solid with rust. In the middle stood a circle of metal folding chairs arranged around a broken control panel. The chairs were facing inward, as if an audience had been sitting there watching the control panel. Now, the chairs were empty, but stains on the seats, wiped away dust, showed that someone had been there recently. On the control panel lay a slipper, a new white one with frayed edges. I approached it. It was too small for a resident. Underneath were letters carved into the leather, F-I-N-I-S-H. My heart was pounding. 5 slippers. Think, watch, death, sleep, and alone end. The complete sentence, think, watch, death, sleep, and alone end, nonsense, and yet it felt like a command. Think, watch, death, sleep alone, get it over with. I radioed. Basement room, now 6 slippers. One more word, end. Rosa's voice came back trembling. We have to get out of here, now. I shook my head. Not until we know what this means. I looked around the chamber. The chairs formed a ring. On the opposite wall, a rusty valve wheel had recently been turned. The pipe leading into the chamber was open. Steam hissed from a broken connection. The floor was slippery. I stepped carefully. At the foot of the control panel, letters were carved into the wood, E-V-E-R. Someone had carved 4 letters with a tool, ever. Below, a final arrow pointed upward toward the stairwell. I stepped back, my adrenaline rising. Ever, the end and alone, sleep, death, wake, think. The words formed a loop, a mantra, a warning, an instruction. Someone was driving us through this madness. I tapped my communication device. We're retreating. Technicians prepare for evacuation. Suddenly, the hissing of steam rose to a screech. The light bulb above us exploded, plunging us into darkness. The beam of my flashlight flickered. The chairs scraped as if someone were getting up and moving them. Soft breathing echoed. "Shh," whispered a voice from the center of the circle. My gun clicked. "Show yourself." A figure emerged from the circle of chairs. Pale uniform, hollow eyes, lips pressed together. He moved silently, each step stirring up dust. In one hand he held a slipper, white but worn. The word "finish" had disappeared. In its place, someone had written a new word in smeared black, "Behold." He lifted the slipper and turned it so that I could see the sole. There was "home" carved into it. A cold shiver ran down my spine. He tilted his head and then pointed to the grid ceiling above us, to the roof of the tunnel. I shone my flashlight upward. The metal grid covered an access shaft. Behind it, I could see the empty underside of the floor above us. There was no sign of how he had got there. Next, he pointed to the circle of chairs, then to me. His hollow eyes bore into me. Then he whispered, "Home." I shuddered. "What do you want?" He put a finger to his lips. "Shh." Then he disappeared into the steam, as if he were dissolving. The chairs slid back into place. The light above us flickered back on. Steam hissed. The chamber was empty. I stood there, frozen. Rosa's flashlight beam trembled on the wall. The technicians stood at the stairs. "Let's go," I said, my voice trembling. We walked back down the stairs and the words echoed in my head: think, look, death, sleep, and alone, end, forever, look, home. A terrible litany. When we stepped into the hallway, the mansion was silent. The scribble, "Wake up R," had faded. The escape door was closed. The gravel outside lay untouched. We disinfected ourselves and took off our suits. The slippers, now 8 in total, lay sealed in bags. Each one had a word written on it. I collected them. They spelled out think, be careful, death, sleepin' alone, end, look, home. Or perhaps think, watch, death, sleepin' alone, end, look at your home. Rosa and I exchanged glances. No one said anything. We took the slippers to the evidence room. I locked the cabinet and turned the key. The words seemed to pulsate through the metal door. That night I drove home with my headlights on. I left the slippers in the trunk, locked. At home, Karen greeted me with concern. I forced a smile. Late shift? I couldn't tell her, not yet. I went into the bedroom. Our son was lying there asleep, his chest rising and falling. I looked at him for a long time, then I turned off the light. In the dark, I lay down next to Karen. Sleep came only fitfully. In every dream I saw hallways and slippers, heard whispers and saw hollow eyes. I woke up and thrashed around. Karen stirred. "Denise?" I whispered. "Nothing." At 3:13 a.m., my radio, which was tuned to the patrol channel, crackled. "Officer Holloway, you should come home." I jumped up. Karen woke up. I grabbed the radio, dead. I sat on the edge of the bed, my heart racing. The words from the tunnels echoed in my head. "Behold home." Morning came. I went to the station. The evidence room was quiet. I left the key on my desk. Headquarters called. "Any news on the call from the mansion?" I swallowed. "We're securing the evidence. No suspects yet." They replied, "Keep us posted." I hung up. I walked past the closet. Something made me look over. Through the ventilation slits, I saw nothing. But the words seemed to float in the air. That evening, I returned to the closet. I opened it. The slippers lay untouched, except for the last one. Home. It was upside down. The sole was facing up. A new word was now carved into the rubber. U.S. I froze. Think, wake, death, sleep, and alone. End, see, home, us. A final whisper echoed through the hallway of the police station, so quiet that I thought I had imagined it. Home, us. My hand trembled as I closed the locker. I realized that the message wasn't over yet. It spoke to me. Go home, but we're with you. Alone, us. I stepped back. The hallway lights flickered. I swallowed hard, my heart pounding. And now, us included me. I stepped out of evidence locker 4 with my notebook in my hand, my heart still pounding from the new message scribbled on the last slipper. U.S. The hallway was empty, the neon lights buzzing above me, but I could almost still hear the whisper. Home. Us. I closed the cabinet door and turned around, catching Rosa's gaze. She nodded to me, shakily, ready for the final step. We gathered the remaining slippers into a single evidence bag, 8 in total, each sealed and labeled. The bag felt heavy, as if it contained more than just rubber and fabric, an atmosphere of fear, a promise. We walked to the patrol car together. Outside, the night was quiet, the moon hidden behind low-hanging clouds. Our footprints in the gravel were the only traces in front of the east wing door. Last time, I said in a low voice, we followed footprints and whispering voices. This time, we're following the message. I tapped the bag, and the message is U.S. It's us. Rosa wrapped her arms around herself. What does that even mean? I swallowed. I don't know, but I think tonight is the end. We drove to the end of the driveway and parked out of sight. The mansion loomed behind us, its windows dark, its hallways silent. I pressed the intercom button. Unit 23 to dispatch. Shut down all non-essential power lines to the east wing. We're doing a final search, footprints, cameras, everything. Code 4-understood, replied the control center. Technicians are on their way. We got out. The night air was so cold it burned our lungs. I carried the evidence bag. Rosa held the flashlights. As we approached the door, I saw the faint outlines of footprints again, barefoot, small, leading away from the door and into the grass. They disappeared at the edge of the trees. I shone my flashlight on the ground. Nothing but leaves. I stepped inside and locked the door behind me. The east hallway greeted us with its usual flickering. Only 2 light bulbs were still burning. The others were flickering or had burned out. There was complete silence except for the soft hum of the emergency lighting. We moved quickly. I called out the room numbers and Rosa wrote them down on her pad. We checked the storage room. Empty. The social worker's office, empty. Caldwell's room, empty. The basement stairs, locked. Now came the last section, the patient wings where residents were still housed. We approached room 201. The door was ajar. The bed in the room was neatly made, and there were personal belongings on the bedside table. A small radio was playing classical music softly. On the floor next to the bed was a white slipper, small, identical to the one from the boiler room, but worn out. I crouched down and put it in a bag. A word was carved deep into the sole. U.S. Rosa's breath caught in her throat. "That's the 8th," she whispered. I nodded. "Now let's find out who us is." We cleared out 201 and then went to 202 and 203, both empty or with sleeping residents who hadn't heard anything. No footprints, no whispering. At the end of the hallway was a windowless storage room. The door was unlocked. I hesitated, then pushed it open. Inside were shelves with cleaning supplies, and a radio speaker stuck to the ceiling. The speaker grills were bent inward, the wires cut. Beneath it, in what looked like dried blood, was scrawled on the wall, "Welcome home." I felt nauseous. I shone my flashlight up at the speaker. It was hanging crookedly, the voice coil torn. Whoever had spoken through it whispered, "Watch, sleep, us," had attached it here. I reached out and touched the cover. It was warm. That had to be the first thing to do. Rosa took photos. I put a piece of the torn wire in a bag as the evidence. The words, "Welcome home," glowed darkly on the peeling paint. We stepped back into the hallway. The lights flickered violently. Behind us, we heard a soft clicking sound. We spun around. The door to the storage room was closed again. No matter, we had already searched it. But now, it was no longer sealed with tape. I approached slowly, flashlight and gun at the ready. I pressed my shoulder against the door and it swung open. It was dark inside. My beam of light fell on mops, boxes, and dust motes. In the back, I saw a figure crouching on the floor. A person, no, smaller, cowering against the wall. I moved closer. "Police!" I shouted. "Hands up!" The figure stood up. A child, a little girl in a nightgown, stood there, her hair matted and her eyes wide and black. She was holding a slipper in each hand, one pink, one blue. She looked at me with an expression that was neither fear nor recognition, but expectation. My heart skipped a beat. "Ma'am, are you all right?" She tilted her head and whispered, "We're home." I glanced at Rosa. She shook her head, her mouth open. I put my gun away. I didn't want to scare her. "Who are you?" I asked gently. She took a step forward. "We live here now." She held up the slippers. One said death, the other sleep. Together they spelled us. Death, sleep, us. I knelt down. "Sweetie, what's your name?" She tilted her head. "We." I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. "We?" She nodded. "We're a family." Rosa cleared her throat. "Officer Holloway, we should—" I raised my hand. My radio crackled. Static, then a single word. "Finally." The girl's lips twisted into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She placed the slippers on a dusty shelf, turned, and walked past me into the hallway. I stood up, my heart pounding. She paused in the doorway and looked back. "End it," she whispered. Then she disappeared into the flickering darkness. I stepped into the hallway. The door slammed behind me. I tried to open it. It was locked. The beam of my flashlight danced across the scribbled words on the wall. Think, be careful. Die, sleep, and alone. End it, see, home. We, welcome, home. Now add, Ian. I radioed Rosa. "The girl," she said Ian. She was shaking. "What should we do?" I looked down the dark hallway toward the distant lobby. The footprints reappeared, small, barefoot, and led in that direction. I put my gun away. "Let's follow her." We ran. The slipper prints led us past the nurse's station, past the flickering TV, to the double doors of the lobby. They were closed. I pressed the bell. Nothing. I swung the door open. The light on the porch outside was dim. The slippers lay on the doormat, one of each color neatly arranged in a circle. In the middle stood a small porcelain doll, an antique nurse's figurine, chipped and broken. Her eyes stared blankly ahead. I knelt down and picked up the doll. Under her foot was another word, family. I swallowed. Family, United States, welcome home. The end. The doll trembled in my hand, even though the air was still. I put it down. Then the doors slammed shut by themselves. I spun around. Rosa's breathing was loud in the sudden silence. "We have to go," she said. I shook my head. "Not yet." I approached the doll. The broken porcelain face reflected the light from the porch. I touched her cheek, the glaze scratched. The word family under her foot now seemed like an invitation and a warning. I reached into the evidence bag and placed the 8 slippers around the doll so that they formed a circle. Think, beware, death, sleep, and alone end, home, us, 9 words. Each slipper formed a point of the circle. The doll stood in the middle. The light on the porch flickered and went out. There was complete darkness, broken only by the beam of my flashlight. A light wind blew, even though the air was still. The doll's eyes seemed to glow. I swallowed. I glanced at Rosa, whose face had turned pale. She took a step back. Then the doll's head turned toward me. Its cracked lips opened. A sound rang out, the distorted, hollow laughter of a child echoing off the brick walls. Rosa screamed. I raised my flashlight. The doll lay motionless. The slippers were where they had been. No movement. I exhaled. A hand gripped my ankle. I screamed and looked down. The little girl from the closet was standing below me, her hand on my leg, her eyes black. She smiled at me. "Family," she whispered. I froze. In her other hand she held another slipper, white, tiny, brand new. I looked at Rosa. She shook her head. There had been no 9th slipper. I looked back at the girl. She placed the slipper in the circle between US and think. On the sole was a word, you. The final message, think, watch. Death, sleep, and alone. Finish, behold home, us you. She giggled. Now it's complete. My radio crackled. A whispering voice, welcome. The doll in the middle rattled, as if something was moving inside it. The porch doors rattled. The little girl stepped back into the darkness. I swallowed hard. Rosa grabbed my arm. We have to go, now. I nodded, but my eyes remained fixed on the doll. The ring of slippers. The last slipper, you. I stepped forward and picked up the doll. Under one arm I saw a faint inscription, stay. My heart skipped a beat. Rosa screamed, Denise! I spun around, clutching the doll tightly, and at that moment the light on the porch came back on. The doors swung open and the entrance to the mansion loomed invitingly before me. The wind died down. The doll's eyes went blank. The slippers lay there silently. Rosa stood in the doorway. Go, she mouthed. I hesitated. The clatter of the slippers seemed to pulsate with anticipation. The doll's broken smile beckoned me. I turned the doll's head toward the open door. Her gaze seemed to follow me, and I took a step inside. The doors closed behind me with a final click. In the sudden silence, I heard the intercom whisper one last sentence. Welcome home, Denise. I froze. The corridors of the mansion stretched out before me, dark and silent. The sound of the slippers and the doll lay sealed in the evidence bag behind me. But the echo of us remained, a promise that we were never alone here. I stepped out of the cruiser into the chill night air, the gravel crunching under my boots. The neon sign above St. Anne's Rest Home flickered, casting a sickly green glow over the cracked concrete. I keyed my mic. Dispatch, Unit 12 on scene. Exterior secure, proceeding inside. The lobby door swung open before I touched it. No staff greeting me, just the low hum of aging fluorescent tubes and the faint scent of antiseptic mixed with something fouler, like stale urine and rot. I crossed the threshold, radio clipped to my chest, hand resting on the butt of my service pistol. The intercom by the nurses' station crackled once, then died. Ahead, the long corridor stretched into darkness, doors on either side like silent witnesses. I clicked on my flashlight. The beam danced over peeling wallpaper and scuffed baseboards. Somewhere down the hall, a drip, drip, drip echoed. I paused, listening. The drip was steady, rhythmic. A radiator valve leaking into an old metal pan, I told myself. Routine. But my gut tightened. "Mrs. Carter," I called, voice low, professional. "Deputy Holloway, St. Lawrence County PD. We're here to help." My breath puffed in the chill. No answer, only the soft hum of the ventilation system struggling to push air through decades of dust-clogged ducts. I moved forward. At the nurses' station, charts lay scattered, as though someone left in a hurry. A half-empty styrofoam coffee cup teetered on the edge. I picked up a chart. Patient M12, Evelyn Carter, age 84, Alzheimer's, prone to wandering. Missing since 20 minutes ago, according to the on-site aide who called it in. I flipped pages, medication logs, vitals, blank incident reports. The corridor light flickered. For a heartbeat, the far end vanished, swallowed by shadow, and I thought I saw movement. A figure hunched just beyond the glow. I swept my light toward it. Nothing. Heart pounding, I stepped on. A door at the end of the hall stood cracked. Yellow, authorized personnel only tape sagged from its frame. I approached. Faint whispering drifted out, disjointed, urgent. Something like, "They're here. Don't let them." The intercom overhead buzzed. I half expected voices. Instead, dead silence. I pushed the door open. Laundry room. Rows of industrial washers and dryers, their stainless steel drums dark and silent. A single dryer door hung ajar. Inside, the drum was empty, but the floor around it was splattered with dark red stains. I knelt. Not quite blood, jam. Raspberry, congealed. A broken jar lay nearby, its lid off, sticky threads glistening under my beam. Why jam? I stood, uneasy. A soft thump behind me. I spun, light cutting across an empty hallway. The laundry door slammed shut. I clicked my radio. "Dispatch, Unit 12, laundry room secure. Negative findings except for spilled jam. Advise?" Static, then. "Copy that." Backup en route. ETA 2 minutes. I nodded, though no one saw. 2 minutes might as well be 2 hours. I exited into the corridor. The hush was absolute. My footsteps echoed. I passed doors labeled Resident Room 1 through 8. Each had a small window, curtains drawn. I peered in, empty beds, rumpled sheets. In room 3, a single slipper lay on the floor. I shone the light, size 5, rosy pink, patterned with little flowers. I crouched, heart in my throat. That matched Mrs. Carter's slipper size. I snapped a photo with my phone, logging evidence. Then, a soft sigh. I jerked up. The sound came from the end of the hall. I moved toward it, every nerve screaming. The drip, drip, drip continued. At the next intersection, the floor tiles were cracked, stained. I stepped over a dark smear. It looked like someone dragged something heavy. I followed it. The smear led to a side door marked Garden Exit. Ajar, moonlight spilling in. I radioed Unit 12 to dispatch. Garden Exit unsecured. I'm securing now. No reply. Dead air. I tried again. "Dispatch, do you copy?" Silence. My stomach dropped. No radio, no phone, alone. I stepped outside. The garden was overgrown. Thorny rose bushes, dead hydrangeas, a cracked stone fountain. Muddy footprints led from the fountain toward a wrought iron gate. I crouched, tracing them. Small, frail prints, Mrs. Carter's sneakers, mixed with larger, deeper prints like someone standing behind her. I stood and scanned the darkness beyond the gate. Nothing but the empty parking lot and the distant silhouette of trees. I sighed and stood. I had to check inside. I re-entered through the garden door. The corridor lights flickered faster now. I passed the laundry room. Its door was closed. The jam jar lay where I left it. I turned the corner and froze. At the far end, under a flickering light, a figure stood. A woman in a pale nightgown, hunched, hair long and tangled, staring straight at me. Her gown was stained a dark crimson at the hem. She didn't move. I swallowed. "Mrs. Carter?" I called. She tilted her head as though listening to something I could not hear. The intercom above crackled to life. A single word. "Run." Then silence. The figure remained unmoving. I stepped forward, hand on my pistol. "Ma'am, I'm here to help you." She vanished. The spot under the light was empty, but the floor tiles bore the muddy footprints, ending there. My pulse thundered. I panned the hallway, no sign of her. I checked my phone, still no signal. Backup would be here soon, but I couldn't risk waiting. I had to find her. I continued down the hall, following the faint sounds of dripping. Room after room, emptiness. In the rec room, chairs were overturned. A TV lay face down on the floor. The intercom crackled again, static, then that same raspy whisper, "Help me." It sounded like Mrs. Carter's voice, distant, distorted. I moved toward the voice, flashlight bobbing. The corridor narrowed. Doors stamped B1 through B4. I tried B1, locked. B2, locked. B3, unlocked. I pushed it open. Inside, a nurse's office. Files scattered, computer monitor dark. The intercom handset lay on the desk, off the hook. I picked it up. "Hello?" My voice shook, only static. A door at the far end creaked. I swept my light there. A closet door stood slightly ajar. Approached, heart hammering. I pulled it open, empty, except for a single rocking chair, slowly moving back and forth, though no one sat in it. I stepped back, breathing hard. The chair stopped. I dropped the handset. It clattered. The closet door slammed shut on its own. I jumped and spun. The intercom above crackled one last time. "Don't trust," then died. I backed out, stumbling into the hallway. My flashlight flickered. In that half-second of darkness, I felt, rather than saw, someone brush past me. I caught the beam back on, empty hallway. I swallowed and pressed on, following the scent of antiseptic and something coppery. Blood? No, the smell faded. I reached the stairwell. Metal door. I opened it. Rusted stairs spiraled upward into blackness. I climbed, each step echoing. On the landing, a pool of dark liquid glistened. I knelt. Real blood this time. Fresh. I wiped a gloved finger and sniffed. Iron. My breath caught. Above me, the stairwell light went out. I fumbled for the rail, heart slamming. I whispered into my mic, "Dispatch." Nothing. I clicked it off. No use. I climbed to the second floor. Doors stamped C1 through C6. At C4, the door hung open. I approached. Inside, a bed stained dark, a broken doll on the floor. The doll's eyes stared blankly. I swallowed. That doll matched the one Mrs. Carter always kept by her bedside. I swept my light, nothing else. Then, a soft sob. Behind me, I spun. At the far end of the hall, under a dying bulb, Mrs. Carter stood rocking in place. Her face was pale, eyes distant. Her lips moved in a silent plea. I stepped forward. "Evelyn." She lifted a trembling hand, pointing down the hallway. I followed her finger, nothing but shadow. I knelt beside her. It's okay, you're safe. She blinked, confused. I offered my hand. She took it, frail fingers closing around mine. I helped her stand. Suddenly, the hallway lights blazed. The doors behind me slammed. I whirled. Mrs. Carter was gone. In her place lay her slipper, perfectly clean, on the tile. My radio crackled to life. Unit 12, backup on scene. Relief and dread collided. I straightened, shining my flashlight down the corridor. Empty. But I knew she'd been here. I stepped forward, leaving the slipper behind, determined to find answers. And somewhere, deep in the vents, I heard that whisper again. He's watching. I followed the slip of tile where her slipper lay, heart hammering, into the deeper wing of the rest home. The overhead fluorescents flicker unevenly, casting sections of corridor into sudden shadow. I tighten my grip on the flashlight and press forward, every footstep echoing like a gunshot. The smell of antiseptic has given way now to a metallic tang. Blood, unmistakable. I pause at a junction where the floor tiling shifts from pale linoleum to dark, rubberized safety matting. Here, the dripping is louder. Drip, 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 coming from somewhere ahead, beyond sight. I round the corner and my light falls on the source. A broken fire hose cabinet, glass shattered, hose lying limp on the floor. Water trickles from its nozzle, pooling in a widening puddle. But beneath that, the liquid's color deepens to crimson where it soaks the mat. I kneel, pressing a gloved finger to the stain. It's warm, fresh, real. My pulse spikes. I lift my head and sweep the beam upward. The exit sign above the stairwell is warped, hanging at an angle. The stairwell door stands slightly ajar. Someone left it open. I radio in, voice low. Unit 12, bleeding spot at stairwell entrance, possible victim trail. I'm moving in. There's static, then dispatch. Copy that. Units at lobby. Proceed with caution. I click off. Caution has never felt so urgent. I push the door fully open and step onto the stairs. They creak under my weight. The walls are scuffed, handrails sticky. The drip echoes louder here, mingled with another sound. A soft rasping, like fabric sliding across concrete. I aim my light down the steps. A smear of red leads 3 flights up. I begin to climb, each footfall slow, deliberate. At the top landing, the door to the hallway beyond stands closed, but the drip seeps through the crack beneath. I press my shoulder to the door and it swings open with a groan. The hallway beyond is darker, the bulbs here burnt out. My flashlight picks out doors on either side, numbered D1 through D8. At D5, the drip is heaviest. Blood pools at the threshold, trailing inside. I approach, pistol drawn. The door is unlocked. I push it, light slicing into the room. Inside, the single bed is overturned. The mattress lies half on the floor, sheets tangled. A dresser drawer hangs open, clothes spilled. The window curtains flap in a breeze, though the window is closed. I step in. The puddle leads beneath the bed. I crouch, shine my light under, nothing. Then I hear it, a faint, keening moan from the closet. I train my light there. The closet door stands cracked. I approach, breath tight in my chest. I whisper, "Police, come out." No response except a moan, low and sorrowful. I reach out, push the door. Inside, hanging on the rod, is Mrs. Carter's gown, stained dark at the hem. Beneath, on the floor, her walker lies tipped over. No sign of her. I step back, unease coiling in my gut. The moan stops. Silence. Then the intercom above crackles. "You shouldn't have come up here." The voice is low, distorted. Unmistakably Mrs. Carter's. My skin crawls. I step out of the room, slamming the door. The hallway light flickers on. Empty corridor. I press my back against the wall, slide down until I'm sitting, breathing hard. My radio crackles. "Unit 12, you there?" Relief floods me. I'm at D5, no sign of resident. Evidence of blood, something's off. Backup approaching stairwell. I stand, holstering my pistol. I'm moving back toward the central wing. I pause. Should I check the room further? Number. I follow the hallway back toward the stairwell door. On the floor, muddy footprints, larger than Mrs. Carter's, lead away toward E-wing. I swallow and follow. The corridor ends at a nurse's alcove, chart racks, an empty desk, a dead computer monitor. The alcove's light is out. I step in, and the cabinet door beneath the desk rattles. I spin, flashlight beam on the cabinet. Its door hangs open. Inside, gowns and gloves tossed aside, and on top, Mrs. Carter's glasses. I pick them up, oval frames, cracked lens. My breath hitches. She wouldn't leave without them. Someone placed them here. A soft scuff behind me. I whirl. Shadow moves at the far end. I call out, "Show yourself." No answer. My flashlight flickers, once, twice, then steadies. The floor beyond is dry. The footprints end here. I crouch, inspecting the linoleum. Faint smears, erased but visible in the beam. Someone wiped them. Someone didn't want me to follow. I stand. The intercom crackles. "Officer Holloway." A pause. Then, "Why are you here?" The voice, older woman's tremor, trembling with fear, but too calm. I answer, "Ma'am, I'm here to find you." "Are you all right?" The line goes dead. I tap the handset. No dial tone. I move on. At the corridor's end is another stairwell. I open the door, stairs twisting down into darkness. I hesitate. The blood trails up, maybe down too. I step in. The smell is stronger here, copper and damp plaster. I flick the light on my phone. 2 flights down, the steps are slick. I grip the railing, advance slowly. At the bottom, a maintenance closet door stands open. Inside, cleaning supplies, mops, buckets. A single mop head lies soaked red in a bucket. I gag. This time it's real. I back out and survey the basement corridor. Pipes run overhead. The fluorescent lamps are spaced far apart. Shadows pool. The drip is deafening now, coming from somewhere left. I follow, aim my light at the pipes. One elbow joint leaks, water tinted dark. I crouch, inspect. A smear on the floor leads away. I follow it to a heavy door marked Boiler Room, authorized personnel only. The red smear on the door handle. I press my palm to it, sticky, warm. I radio, Unit 12, possible blood on boiler room door. Request hazmat and medical. No response. I try again, silence. I slide the door open. Inside, hulking metal tanks, valves, the hiss of steam. The heat hits me immediately. My flashlight beam picks out a figure slumped against the far wall. I rush forward, heart in my throat. It's a staff aide, J. Morales, conscious, eyes wide with terror. His uniform soaked in red. He gasps, "They took her. Down, below." He slides his gaze to a low hatch at the floor's edge. A maintenance crawl space. The lid is ajar. I shout into my radio, "Dispatch!" I've found staff, bleeding, disoriented. There's a crawlspace hatch here. I'm going in. The hatch gapes like a mouth. Steam drips from its edges. I shine my light inside. Damp bricks, descending tunnel. The moan of distant machinery. I check Morales. He's incoherent, babbling about the watcher and the room. I lift him to his feet. He slumps. I push him back gently. "Stay here," I order. He nods, wide-eyed. I climb into the crawlspace. It's tight. I wedge myself between brick and pipe. The tunnel slopes downward, water pooling at my knees. I press on, crawling, my light flickering across damp mortar. The air grows colder, musty. The drip becomes echoing, a steady beat. I emerge into a low-ceiling chamber, storage under the original manor. Old wood beams, rusted tools. In the center, chained to a pipe, is a wheelchair, antique, rusted. On its seat lies Mrs. Carter's nightgown, stained dark. No Mrs. Carter. A soft scraping behind me. I spin, light on a narrow passage leading deeper. Something moved. I stand, the tunnel barely room to turn. I call out, voice echoing, "Evelyn! Mrs. Carter!" Silence. Then, from the passage, a faint cackle. My blood runs cold. I step back. My foot hits something soft. I look down. Mrs. Carter's slipper, covered in grime and blood. The pair are reunited, one here, one upstairs. I lift the slipper, wet, heavy. The cackle grows louder, reverberating off stone. I follow the sound into the tunnel. It slopes up, leading to a small metal door set into the foundation wall. The door is padlocked, the lock is broken. I push it open. Beyond is a narrow shaft of stairs ascending toward the main building. I climb, every step trembling. I emerge into the hallway outside the front entrance, where I started. The lobby lights are bright, sterile. The fountain jam jar is gone. The TV is playing that old soap opera again. Morales lies unconscious at the nurse's station. I stagger out, radio clutched. Dispatch. Suspect chamber found. No sign of resident. Something's very wrong. Backup arrives moments later. They swarm in. EMTs for Morales. Officers sweeping corridors. I stand at the entrance, breathing hard. The rest home seems unchanged. Yet everything has shifted. I glance up at the broken intercom. The handset lies where I dropped it. I pick it up, static. Then, in the crackle, a whisper, "Stay with me." I freeze. The voice is soft, Mrs. Carter's voice, but layered, echoing. I drop the handset. It swings, cord coiling. The final officer steps beside me. "You okay?" he asks. I nod, numbly. Behind us, the door closes on its own. The lights flicker. In the hush, I hear the drip, 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 coming from somewhere deep inside, and I realize we found the tunnel, the hatch, the chamber, but we never found her. I step back through the lobby into the corridor, boots echoing on the linoleum as officers and EMTs flood past me. Their flashlights carve arcs through the stale air. I rub my temples, trying to shake the haze of adrenaline, and the memory of that whisper, "Stay with me." It felt like Evelyn's voice, but warped, doubled, as if more than one presence spoke at once. I glance at the stairwell door, sealed now with police tape. Morales is on a stretcher, murmuring about the watcher and underneath. EMTs wheel him away. I key my mic. Unit 12 clearing the lobby, moving back to central corridor. My partner, Officer Reed, falls in beside me. His face is grim under the flashlight's beam. "Find anything?" he asks quietly. I nod toward the sealed hatch. Crawl space under boiler room, an old chamber, Evelyn's gown, wheelchair, but no Evelyn. He frowns. And the jam? The drizzle of blood? "You sure that wasn't an animal or a prank?" I shake my head. "Jam, yes, but real blood too, fresh, leading down the tunnel. Morales saw her or something in the crawl space." My voice tightens. He babbled about more, something watching. Reed's jaw clenches. "Let's finish clearing, then call for K9 and forensics. See if we get prints in that tunnel." I agree. We move down the hall. Officers knock on doors, check rooms. Residents are locked safely in the dining hall, being comforted by staff. None report seeing Evelyn. None heard screams. The building hums with controlled urgency. Yet I feel the same wrongness, the static tension. At the laundry room, the jam jar is gone. A cleaner kneels, mopping the floor. He looks up, startled. "Officer, you want me to bag this section?" I crouch. The tile is spotless now. No smear, no red. Reed slips on the wet patch. I help him up. Even this place's grime seems to scrub away too cleanly. We proceed to the corridor where I first saw her figure. The spot is empty, perfectly unblemished linoleum, as if no one ever stood there. I kneel, pressing my glove to the floor. No indent, no scuff. Reed shines his light. "Nothing," he murmurs. We continue. At the wing junction, forensic techs examine the broken fire hose cabinet. They tag the nozzle and hose, swab the floor. I watch them lift the cabinet's shards. The dripping has stopped. The puddle is gone. Reed claps me on the shoulder. "We'll get answers." I force a nod, but in my gut, I know this isn't over. We reach the nurse's alcove where I found her glasses. A tech bags the frames. I lean in. The lenses are cracked in the same pattern I saw. I touch the bag. "Keep these safe." The tech glances up, uneasy. We clear the basement entrance. The hatch is sealed with evidence tape. A K-9 unit arrives. The dog sniffs at the seal, whines, scratches. It's uncomfortable even to watch. Reed shoves the tunnel hatch closed. Let's not let anything out or in until we know what we're dealing with. I radio dispatch. "Officer Holloway, incident log updated. Recommend mental health crisis team for Morales, full forensic sweep of building, tunnel, and grounds, and," I hesitate, "request chaplain. I need someone to talk to the residents." Dispatch responds. Copy that. Chaplain en route. I sigh. The adrenaline drains, replaced by a hollow weight. Reed falls silent beside me, watching the sealed hatch. We share a look. Neither of us wants to confront what might be down there again, yet we have to. I move on, walking the corridor toward the dining hall. Staff and residents mill in clusters, hushed voices, frightened eyes. I stop by a window. Outside, the parking lot is calm under the street lamps, no footprints except ours, no sign of Evelyn. A nurse approaches, wringing her hands. "Officer, they found this in the dining hall." She holds out a folded piece of paper. I open it carefully. In neat, shaky handwriting. He won't let me leave. My blood runs cold. I look up. The nurse's face is pale. Behind me, the intercom crackles once, a single, ragged inhale. I whirl, nothing but the silent corridor. I fold the note, pocket it. I lean close to the nurse. Everyone stays together. No one goes back to their rooms until morning shift. She nods, eyes wide. I step back into the hallway. Reed falls in beside me again. I show him the note. His lips press thin. "God help us," he murmurs. We continue the sweep. At the end of the hall, the maintenance door stands closed. Beyond it lies the tunnel hatch. I pause. Every instinct screams that evil lurks below, but procedure demands we inspect. I nod to Reed. He cuts the tape. The hatch creaks open. Darkness yawns. Reed turns to me. "After you." I glance down into the crawlspace. The stale air drifts up. The beam from my flashlight bounces off wet bricks. I taste rust on my tongue. I step in. Reed follows. The hatch closes above us with a dull thud. The corridor lights blink off. Below, only our breath and the echo of dripping. We advance. Midway through, Reed's light catches something on the wall. Scratches, deep gouges in the brick, as if claws raked them. I run my glove along the marks. The edges are fresh, damp. My skin prickles. A low, scraping sound comes from ahead. We freeze. I whisper, "Hello?" The sound stops. Reed sweats under his gear. I swallow. I take a step forward. Suddenly, the beam illuminates a figure at the far end, small, hunched, rocking. Evelyn. Her face turned away. I call, voice trembling. "Evelyn." She stops rocking. Slowly she turns, her eyes are black pits. Her mouth curves into a smile that wasn't hers. She lifts a hand, points backward, into deeper darkness. Behind her, something shifts in the shadows. A tall shape, featureless, watching. I lift my pistol, heart in my throat. Reed flicks on his light too. The beams converge on the watcher. It steps forward. No feet, just a smear of darkness across the bricks. It tilts its head. Evelyn cackles. The note in my pocket trembles. I glance down. The words have changed. Now it reads, "Stay with me forever." My radio crackles, some impossibly faint voice. "Don't leave me." The tunnel walls echo it back. I look up. The watcher's inches from my face. An absence shaped like a man. My flashlight flickers. Reed shouts. I fire once. The figure wavers, dissolves into black mist that seeps into the cracks. Evelyn screams, a piercing, broken sound. I shoulder her aside. We bolt back toward the hatch. The tunnel behind us collapses with a roar, brick and mortar raining. We burst into the nurse's alcove, hearts pounding. The hatch above slams shut on its own. I grab Evelyn's arm. She goes limp, whispering, "He won't let me go." Reed barricades the hatch. I drop the note. The words spin. "Who will free me?" We stand in the stale air, surrounded by flickering lights. The rest home is silent, watching. I realize we've sealed something in or out, and Evelyn's slipper lies in the tunnel, still caked in blood. Above, the intercom crackles. "Officer Holloway?" A single word, "Help," and no one answers. I scramble upright in the nurse's alcove, heart hammering. Reed slams a rolling computer cart against the hatch door, metal scraping on tile. The tunnel's collapse behind us rattles the walls. A deep, grinding roar that ends abruptly, as if swallowed by the building's foundations. Silence follows, heavy and expectant. I press my back to the wall, flashlight trembling. Evelyn slumps in my other arm, eyes glazed. Her lips move. He's below, waiting. I glance at Reed. He's pale under his cap, hand on his holster. Neither of us speaks. We barely breathe. Minutes pass. The intercom crackles overhead. "Officer Holloway, status?" Dispatch's voice is distant, tinny. I key the mic. We're safe. Secured the hatch. But there's structural collapse below. We need structural and rescue teams before anyone else goes down. Static. Copy that. Then silence. Reed moves to Evelyn, kneels. "Ma'am, can you hear me? We're getting you out." She tilts her head, tracking some unseen presence. She whispers, "He wants company." Her voice echoes unnaturally in the alcove. I shine my light down the corridor. The rest home seems unchanged. Orderlies usher residents in the dining hall. Lights flicker normally, the distant clamor of radios and conversation. It's as if the basement horror never happened. I squat beside Evelyn. "We're getting you help." Reed gently lifts her arms to remove her restraints. She winces. Blood from a shallow wrist cut, likely from the tunnel, seeps into her gown. Suddenly, the overhead fluorescents flicker violently, then go dark. The alcove plunges into semi-darkness, lit only by our flashlights. A distant mechanical groan, like the building shifting. Reed curses under his breath. I stand, sweeping the beam. "Stay close." We move into the corridor. Officers glance at us questioningly. I shake my head. "All secure here. Keep residents calm." They nod, but eyes linger on the sealed hatch above. We head back toward the lobby. Each step seems louder now, as if the building itself listens. At the central intersection, a tech kneels by the jam-stained spot, now clean. He frowns. "Officer, you want to look at this?" He points to the floor. Tiny droplets, almost invisible, forming a trail toward the east wing. They weren't there before. Reed crouches, examines with a flashlight. Blood, he says softly. Fresh. I feel bile rise. We follow the droplets down the east corridor. The trail leads past locked resident rooms, ends at the door to the chapel, a small room used for visits and quiet reflection. The chapel door is closed. I push it open. Inside, the stained glass windows cast colored patterns on the floor. Benches stand in rows. At the front, the altar is empty, but on it lies Mrs. Carter's walker, its wheels smeared red. The tiny doll from the tunnel sits on the altar steps, doll's dress stained. I step forward, careful. Reed's voice is low. This is sacrilege. He moves to bag the doll. I lift the walker's handle. It's warm. I glance at Evelyn. She stands in the doorway, swaying. He brought me here, she murmurs, to show me. She steps forward, touching the doll. Her fingertip leaves a smear on the altar's white cloth. I clear my throat. Ma'am, please step back. She does, eyes wide, as if waking from a dream. She glances around, confused. Where am I? I say gently. Chapel. You're safe. She nods, but her gaze drifts to the stained glass. Faces of saints illuminated in red and gold. She whispers, he's in the glass. My blood runs cold. I follow her gaze. In one pane, the grim profile of a hooded figure. Unusual in a Christian chapel. I step closer. The figure's eyes seem to glint. The glass is old, hand-painted decades ago. But in the shifting flashlight beam, the figure's head seems to tilt just slightly, watching. I jerk back, heart pounding. Reed shoots me a look. You see that? I nod. He snaps photos. The figure remains still in normal light, but through the camera's viewfinder it appears subtly different. A darker void where its face should be. A soft scraping behind the pews. I spin. A maintenance worker stands there, face ashen. Officer, the chapel door was locked. I heard crying. He trembles. I nod, signaling him back. He retreats, eyes fixed on the altar. I close the chapel door, lock it with tape. Nobody enters until we process evidence. I step into the hall. Evelyn clutches Reed's hand. I guide them both toward the lobby. At the nurse's station, the chaplain arrives, a gray-haired woman with a calm demeanor. She kneels beside Evelyn, murmuring comfort. Evelyn's body relaxes. I step aside, watching. The chaplain lays a hand on Evelyn's shoulder. Evelyn sighs, closing her eyes. I turn to Reed. We need to seal that tunnel for good, then structural, then a full sweep for any other chambers. He nods. And we need to re-interview Morales, once he's lucid. I glance at the sealed hatch overhead. Something inside me resists, leaving it closed. The chaplain stands. Evelyn opens her eyes, clear now, and thanks her. She looks at me. Officer Holloway, thank you. Her voice is steady but haunted. I nod. I step into the lobby. The cleaning crew has replaced the jam jar. The TV soap plays on. The neon sign outside hums through the window. Reed joins me. What now? He asks. I stare at the front door. We wait for morning. Then demolition crew opens that hatch. We find what's left. And we hope whatever he is stays buried. Reed exhales. And if not? I glance back at the chapel's stained glass image, see the void where a face should be, and imagine it watching me still. I swallow. Then we pray. Behind me, the intercom crackles once more. A single word. Finally. I freeze. Reed tenses. The lobby falls, silent. Finally what? I whisper. No answer, just the hum of the fluorescents. I step toward the intercom. My hand trembles. I lift the handset. A breath. Close. Urgent. Then, stay with me. I drop the handset. It clatters. The cord coils lifeless. I look at Reed. He meets my eyes, understanding. The rest home is quiet again, too quiet. and somewhere behind sealed doors and collapsed tunnels something waits, watching. And I realize closing the hatch sealed us in with it. The intercom's final plea, "Stay with me," echoes in my ears as I back away, heart hammering. Reed steps beside me, flashlight and pistol raised, eyes scanning the lobby's shadows. The rest, home, feels impossibly still, as if the building itself holds its breath. I force myself to move. "Let's finish this," I whisper. We cross the lobby and push through the double doors into the central corridor once more. The yellow police tape flutters like a warning banner. Beyond it lies the stairwell hatch, sealed, but I can still hear the faintest scrape, the softest scuff, as if something claws on the other side, eager to return. Reed kneels by the hatch. "Ready?" he asks. I nod. He slices the tape. The hatch swings open, revealing pitch-black nothingness. The stale air from below drifts up in a slow exhale. I shine my light down. The tunnel mouth yawns, slick bricks disappearing into shadow. I hesitate. Every instinct screams to leave it sealed. But Evelyn's words, "He wants company," ring in my mind. Lives are at stake. I drop into the crawlspace first. The walls close in. Water drips from unseen pipes. My boots splash through shallow puddles tinted faint red. Reed follows. The hatch clatters shut above us. We advance toward the chamber site. Halfway there, the tunnel walls bear fresh scratches, deep gouges gouged across the mortar. I touch one, fingertips trembling. Something powerful dragged itself here. Something not human. Ahead, I see the glow of Reed's light illuminating the lower chamber entrance. The broken wheelchair rests where we left it. The gown is gone. The damp floor is stained dark. I swallow. This place feels alive, hungry. Reed whispers, "Check the corners." We sweep the beam across the walls. In one corner, scrawled in what looks like dried blood, are words, "Join me." My skin crawls. I snap a photo. Reed kneels, bagging a shard of brick. I step deeper. The circular chamber looms. The pipe to which the wheelchair was chained extends into darkness. Beneath it, the floor grate is ajar, loose. I crouch, peering in. Something moves below, an inhuman shape slipping back into the void. I gasp and stumble back. Reed catches me. A sudden clatter. The grate falls completely inward. The chamber plunges into darkness. Our flashlights flicker. I hear breathing from below, slow, deliberate, watching. I level my pistol at the grate. "Show yourself." My voice reverberates. Only silence answers. Then a soft, mocking laugh, childlike, warped. Reed unclips a small LED light and fits it onto the end of his rifle. He aims at the grate. "Ready?" I nod, though my hands shake. He kicks the grate aside. We step forward onto the lower level, an abandoned sub-basement none of the blueprints mention. The air is frigid. Our breath fogs. The LED beam cuts through the gloom. Rusted support beams, puddles, debris. And in the center, chained to a support column, sits Mrs. Carter's wheelchair. The doll lies in her lap, doll's dress slick with fresh blood. Evelyn is nowhere to be seen. I call her name. My voice echoes. The only reply is the drip of water. Then, from the far corner, I catch movement. A tall silhouette steps into view, featureless as before. But now its form is sharper, a gaunt shape, limbs elongated, head tilted. It regards us. My heart seizes. Reed levels his rifle. The creature tilts its head, as if curious. Then it steps forward, no sound. I raise my flashlight higher. The beam falls on its torso, torn uniform. A nurse's smock from the old days. Its chest cavity yawns open, blackness within. I stare, horrified. It lifts a hand, pointing upward. My gaze follows, toward a narrow shaft leading further down. A faint, sickly green glow seeps from below. From the shaft, I hear a rasp, Evelyn's voice, calm. He waits. I look back. Evelyn stands at the tunnel entrance above us, face pale, eyes distant. She whispers, "He's lonely." Reed steps forward. We bring her up, now. I rush up the stairs, hoisting Evelyn into my arms. Her body is limp. Reed covers our retreat, muzzle tight on the watcher. As we ascend, the watcher reaches out, long fingers brushing the column. The chain rattles. We burst into the chamber above, slamming the hatch. Reed wedges it with a tool. We collapse against the door, breathing hard. Above, the corridor lights are normal again. Distant voices, officers calling. I open the hatch. Reed hauls Evelyn out first, then me. We emerge into the lobby, blinking in harsh light. Officers rush forward. I hand Evelyn to the chaplain. She's alive, though pale as a ghost. I turn to Reed. Seal it, forever. He nods, watching the hatch as they tape it shut. I step outside into the night. The neon sign hums. The breeze is calm. I look back at the darkened windows. Something moves behind the glass, just a flicker. A shape at an upper window watching. I whisper, "We stayed with you." No answer, only the wind. As I climb into my cruiser, my radio crackles. Unit 12, status? I glance at the sealed doors. We found her, we lost her, we contained it. For now. Dispatch is silent. I start the engine. The neon sign's flicker reflects on the hood. I pull away. In the rearview mirror, the rest home recedes, but in one lit window, I see a dark figure standing. Head tilted, watching me depart. I drive off into the night, mind racing. Behind me, the building stands silent, patient, waiting for the next shift. And somewhere below, chained in darkness, the watcher smiles. I drove down the gravel driveway without sirens and with dimmed headlights. I didn't want to scare the residents any more than they already were. At the end of the street, Crestwood Manor loomed, an aging two-story brick building with dark windows and peeling paint on the gutters. The call had come in just before midnight. Possible missing person. Resident heard screams in the hallway. A routine check, they said. A quiet nursing home in the country. No incidents of violence. A quiet night. I parked under a lone sodium vapor lamp that flickered like a dying firefly. The air was muggy, and cicadas chirped somewhere in the trees. My partner Davis was already inside the building. He had taken the emergency call directly and gone in to coordinate with the staff. I grabbed my radio, flashlight, and gun and got out of the patrol car. The gravel crunched under my boots, an almost familiar sound after years on patrol. At the front door, I was greeted by the night nurse, a tired woman named Carter, her hands shaking. Her blue uniform looked pretty neat in the porch light, but her eyes were red-rimmed. "Officer," she whispered, "thank God, it's Mrs. Abernathy again." I nodded and pushed past her into the lobby. The intercom crackled above me, a thin metallic screech that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. The reception desk was empty, magazines fanning out in the musty breeze from a broken ceiling vent. In the corner, a TV was showing a commercial for arthritis creams. No sound. The plastic chairs in the waiting area cast long shadows under the bright neon lights. "Show me," I said. Carter led me to a hallway that turned off to the east wing. She spoke quietly. She was found here in the hallway about an hour ago. She said someone was calling her name. Then she just disappeared. We walked past one room after another. Each door had a small nameplate and a numbered tag. Most of the doors were closed, but some were open, revealing empty beds and rumpled sheets. The carpet was worn and covered with an unrecognizable flower pattern. There were scuff marks on the walls at wheelchair height. Wheelchair marks, the staff said. A drop from a leaky pipe echoed like a slow drumbeat. At the end of the hallway, a single door stood ajar. Room 312. The nurse pointed to it. She was there. I pushed the door open carefully. It swung inward with squeaky hinges. The room was empty. A thin blanket lay folded at the foot of the bed. The mattress had a perfect imprint where someone had been sitting. On the bedside table was a half-empty glass of water with beads of condensation glistening in the beam of my flashlight. I crouched down to examine the floor. Footprints in the dust. Small slipper prints leading into the hallway. Someone had deliberately walked this way. I radioed Davis. Holloway to Davis. I'm in 312. No sign of Mrs. Abernathy. Traces lead east. Static, then his voice. Understood. I'll check the nurse's station. No sign of her on the cameras so far. Be careful. I stood up and shone the flashlight down the hallway. The flickering light made every shadow twitch. I moved forward, my boot heels clicking. At the other end, the wall paneling looked strange. Slightly recessed, like a door without a handle. I stopped. Then the whispering began, soft, breathy, as if someone were speaking through a wet cloth. I turned around, the flashlight cutting through the darkness, but the hallway was empty. The whispering turned into a sigh. My heart was pounding. I approached the paneling and pressed my palm against the cool surface. It gave way with a hollow thud. Behind it was a maintenance crawl space, only 2 meters deep, with old stains on the concrete walls. Pipes ran overhead. The whispering stopped. I shone my flashlight inside. Nothing but dust and old cables. I stepped back as the panel fell shut on its own with a final click. My radio crackled. Denise? Davis. Everything okay? Yes, I lied. Just a maintenance room. He didn't press the issue. Meet me at the nurse's station. See you there. I walked down the hallway and followed the tracks. They ended at the intersection near the nurse's station. Wiped lines on the vinyl floor. The sliding glass doors to the station were dark. Carter had left her keys on the counter. I knocked on the window. No answer. I opened the window a crack and climbed in. Medical records were scattered around the room. A medication log was open at today's date. The ink smeared on the pages. The phone was off the hook. I put it back. There was no dial tone. I dialed the switchboard again, but the line was dead after the first ring. I frowned. The building's old wiring was understandable. But why now? A soft rustling behind me made me spin around. Carter stood in the doorway, her face pale. "She's back there," she whispered, nodding toward the hallway. I radioed Davis. No answer. My heart pounding, I stepped back into the hallway. The whispering returned, much louder, a chorus of whispering exhalations. My flashlight flickered. I held it up. At the other end, under the broken light, I saw her. Mrs. Abernathy huddled together, her nightgown stained, her hair matted. She stared at me with empty eyes. I swallowed. "Ma'am, I'm Officer Holloway. Are you all right?" My voice sounded tinny in the silence. She didn't move. Then she began to slide forward. No steps, no shuffling, just a gentle movement. The whisper became words. "Help me." I took a step back. The temperature dropped. My breath formed a mist in front of me. The fluorescent light above us went out, and when it came back on, she was gone. The hallway was empty. The footprints continued, leading past me and around the corner. I ran after them, adrenaline rushing through my veins. I turned the corner into the west wing, abandoned for 10 years, according to the staff. The doors were boarded up. The floor was covered with a thick layer of dust. The whispering echoed from everywhere and nowhere. My boots left prints next to theirs. Then I heard a click, like a camera shutter. I froze. The beam of my flashlight flickered. On the wall, I saw it. A small black box, a surveillance camera with a broken lens that was flashing red. Below it, a message was smeared in the dust. "Officer." My radio crackled to life. "Holloway, come in." It was Davis, panicking. "What the hell is going on? We've lost power in the lobby. The doors are locked. No one can get in or out." I swallowed. I'm with Mrs. Abernathy. She just..." I swung the lamp to the end of the hallway. A shadow moved across the wall, not human, distorted. I ran forward. The boards over the door were splintered. The hallway beyond was even darker. My radio crackled. "Reinforcements are on their way. Hang in there." I turned it off. Reinforcements wouldn't help here. I stepped through the broken door into the darkness. The whispering became a roar that enveloped me. I raised my flashlight and the beam caught a figure at the other end. Now larger, stretching, with elongated limbs. Its head was tilted at an impossible angle. I swallowed, my heart pounding in my throat. "Mrs. Abernathy?" I called. The thing didn't answer. It floated closer, its feet not touching the ground. The whisper swelled into a single sentence. "Stay. With me." I clutched my flashlight like a lifeline. My training screamed at me to back away, call for a taser, retreat. But something in her eyes, empty, pleading, held me there. The boards behind me creaked. I glanced over my shoulder. A figure was pressing against the wood. Something was pushing its way in. My radio crackled with static laughter. I raised my voice. "Davis, now!" The thing paused, tilted its head, and listened. The whispering stopped. In the silence, I could hear my own heartbeat. Footsteps behind the boards. Then a crash. The wood splintered, and I braced myself. But before the board fell away, the camera above me went out. The hallway was plunged into darkness. I fumbled for my radio. Nothing. My flashlight flickered twice and then went out. I was alone in complete darkness, hearing breathing that wasn't mine, feeling eyes on the back of my neck. I took a step forward toward where she had been. The boards fell to the floor behind me with a clatter. I didn't turn around. The whisper floated through the darkness. "Don't leave me." My hand found something on the wall, a cold metal handrail. I followed it, each step echoing. At the end of the hallway, I felt a draft. Fresh air, like from an open window. A glimmer of moonlight. I stepped inside and stumbled out onto the third-floor balcony, overlooking the lobby atrium. Below, I saw movement. Davis, flashlight pointed upward, talking into his radio. He waved. I breathed a sigh of relief and froze. On the balcony across from me, bathed in the same moonlight, stood Mrs. Abernathy. She raised a pale hand and pointed directly at me. Then she smiled. I blinked, and she was gone. I turned to run back, and the door slammed shut. The whisper followed me. "Stay with me." My hand rattled the doorknob. Locked, no key, no radio, just the night wind and that beckoning voice. I pressed my back against the door and breathed heavily. Something moved somewhere behind the plastered wall. The whispering turned into laughter, hollow, echoing. I closed my eyes, my heart pounding. Logic told me that the boards would break again, and Davis would find me. But logic had already failed me. I opened my eyes. The balcony was empty. Moonlight shimmered on the cracked linoleum floor. The intercom above me crackled, and a single word came out of the speaker. "Officer?" I swallowed. I took out my flashlight and radio. I forced my voice to remain calm. "Holloway here." No answer. The intercom clicked and fell silent. I was alone, and she was still out there. The boards on the balcony door splintered inward with a sickening crack, and I fell backward, sliding across the concrete floor. My flashlight fell from my hand and spun, casting desperate arcs of light across the walls. The whispering laughter echoed through the empty east wing, childlike, mocking, impossibly far away, and yet right behind me. I scrambled to my feet, my heart pounding. The door lay in ruins. Behind it, the corridor stretched into darkness. I reached for my radio, dead, my gun, still in its holster but heavy and promising. I drew it, the metallic click unnaturally loud. "Davis!" I called in a hoarse voice. No answer, just the laughter sliding along the walls. I forced myself forward, each step a decision. The hallway lights flickered, shadows forming at the edges. The plastered walls were covered with wheelchair marks and scratches, but now new notches appeared. Tall, narrow scratches carved into the paint as if something long had been scraped against it with fingernails. I passed room 318. Its door was sealed with yellow, out-of-order tape. The tape fluttered, even though there was no wind. I approached and aimed the beam of my flashlight at the tape. The whispering became words. "Officer Holloway, come in." My stomach tightened. I pressed my boot against the tape. It tore. The door swung open, revealing darkness. I stepped inside. The room was empty, except for a single rocking chair in the middle, swaying gently back and forth, even though no one was sitting in it. The whisper came from the chair. "Sit down, next to me." I swallowed. My training told me to secure the room and call for backup. Instead, I approached cautiously and shone my flashlight on the peeling paint of the chair. On the seat were Mrs. Abernathy's slippers, tiny, faded, worn at the heels. My breath caught in my throat. I bent down and picked up a slipper. The fabric felt brittle, like old silk. Underneath was a message scratched into the wooden floor. "Stay." The whispering turned into a soft moan. The chair stopped shaking. I turned around. Nothing. Then the wobbling started again, faster, the chair legs scraping across the floor. I dropped the slipper and backed toward the door. A hand grabbed my ankle. I screamed and kicked. My flashlight flew through the air, its beam darting across the ceiling. When I kicked again, the hand disappeared. The whisper, "Don't go." I ran out of the room and almost tripped over the threshold. The lights in the hallway flickered and went out, leaving me standing in almost complete darkness. I turned on my flashlight, its beam breaking into stuttering pulses. I ran, the door frames flying past me until I reached the stairwell. The door was closed, the handle limp. I ripped it open and stumbled down 3 flights of stairs, where I rolled into the lobby. Davis stood there with his gun drawn. Relief and anger fought on his face. "Denise, where the hell were you?" I raised a hand. "She's up there. Something's wrong with her." I pointed back up the stairs. "We have to get her out of there." He glanced at the stairwell, then at the broken balcony door behind me. "We'll report this. We'll call SWAT and a priest." I nodded, my voice shaking. "And I'll stay with her." He frowned. "You're not alone." I forced a laugh. "I've never been alone." We radioed headquarters. Holloway and Davis requesting emergency evacuation and spiritual support. Possibly hostile person at Crestwood Manor. The response was brief. "Roger that. SWAT is on the way. Estimated arrival in 5 minutes." We stepped back into the stairwell. The air was colder here, each breath a white cloud. The neon tube above us hummed before going out. My flashlight illuminated the concrete steps. Downstairs, the light in the lobby went out. In the darkness, the reception intercom crackled. "Officer..." Davis froze. "That thing is in every circuit." We continued climbing. On the landing on the second floor, the whispering swelled into a chorus. Voices overlapped, urgent, pleading, eerie. I caught fragments. Don't go. Stay. We need you. On the third floor, the east and west wings were empty. The door to the east wing, through which we had come, had disappeared and been replaced by a solid wall. I reached out and pressed my hand against the cool plaster. No gap, no covering. My heart was pounding. Davis shone his flashlight on the wall. What the hell? I shook my head. She doesn't want us to leave. We turned toward the west wing. The floorboards creaked. At the other end, under a broken light fixture, I saw her again, the silhouette of Mrs. Abernathy. She stretched out her arms and waved to us. As we got closer, the floorboards sank beneath her feet as if she were standing on soft ground. I swallowed and called out, "Ma'am, this way, we'll take you home." She tilted her head. The whisper merged with her voice. "You can't leave." I glanced at Davis. He swallowed and raised his rifle. "We're getting you out of here, one way or another." She smiled, an impossible smile. Then the wall behind her opened like a wound. Behind it was another corridor, longer, darker, infinitely deep. The whispering now came from that corridor. "Follow me. Stay." Davis hesitated. "We shouldn't." I stepped forward. "She's leading us." We entered the corridor. The air smelled of damp earth and decay. The ground beneath our boots seemed to pulsate. The whispering grew more desperate. "Hurry. Don't leave me alone. Stay with me." Halfway down the corridor, we passed room 321. The door was ajar. Inside, wheelchairs were overturned and blankets lay scattered like corpses. A nurse's trolley lay on its side, pills scattered in all shapes and sizes. The beam of my flashlight fell on something on the wall, a dark red stain. It wasn't blood, but rust. It traced a handprint and then dripped down in small rivulets. Davis swallowed. "We have to get out of here." I shook my head. An instinct drove me forward. At the end of the hallway were double doors, like emergency exits. The push bar was intact. I raised my hand to push, a whisper right next to my ear. "Don't." I froze. Davis muttered, "Denise." I pushed the bar. The doors didn't swing out, but into complete darkness. The corridor continued, narrowing, and the whisper was now 1,000 voices singing, "Stay." My mind screamed at me to back away. But the figure at the other end called to me, a pale face floating in the darkness, with hollow eyes. I took a step forward. Davis grabbed my arm. "No!" We struggled with our hands. Behind me, the doors slammed shut. The singing grew louder. I turned around, and the flashlight illuminated dozens of figures, residents in faded nightgowns, with expressionless faces drifting toward us. Their feet did not touch the floor. Their mouths opened in silent screams. Davis raised his rifle. The beam of light hit the face of one figure, Mrs. Abernathy, then another, then another. They passed through us like mist. I felt the cold creeping into my bones. The singing turned to crying. The walls of the corridor wept dark liquid. The exit doors reappeared behind us, glowing faintly. Davis shouted, "Run!" I took off. He covered me until the crying figures had disappeared. We rushed through the doors and stumbled onto the hospital's roof garden. Moonlight bathed the ivy and benches in a soft glow. The wind was warm. I looked back. The doors had disappeared and turned into bricks. The roof was empty. Only the hum of the city could be heard. Davis sank against the wall. "What was that?" I closed my eyes. "She's still here." He shook his head. "We'll get you help, and her too." I nodded, but my gaze remained fixed on the spot where the doors had been. The whisper came one last time in the wind. "Stay. With me." I swallowed. The lights of the city stretched out below us. Logic told me to leave, but logic had failed me twice already tonight. I turned to Davis. One more round, he exhaled. Let's find her. The corridor behind the doors on the roof disappeared into the darkness as we walked through it. No wind, no moonlight, just the silence of something large and empty. My flashlight trembled in my hand, casting a narrow, flickering beam of light onto walls that seemed to extend further than was architecturally possible. The singing voices had fallen silent and been replaced by an oppressive silence that pressed against my eardrums. Davis breathed in short gasps. He aimed his rifle into the darkness. "Stay close to me," he whispered. I nodded, my nerves on edge. Behind us, the double doors closed silently. In front of us, the floor of the hallway dropped away, the linoleum giving way to cracked concrete. Water collected in shallow rivulets at the edges, reflecting the beam of my flashlight like liquid silver. We continued on, our boots echoing. Each step seemed long, as if we were wading through something invisible. The air was cold, colder than any night air, and bit through my uniform. My breath was white. Halfway up the slope, the corridor forked. To the left was a group of old wooden doors labeled laundry, storage, and staff only. To the right, the corridor continued into the darkness. Above, a single emergency light flickered twice and then went out. I swallowed. Which way? Davis switched on his second flashlight. The beam fell to the left, where the door to the laundry room was ajar. A faint yellow glow pulsed inside. "Let's check there," he said. I shook my head. She led us here. I pointed to the right. He hesitated, his jaw muscles tensing. Then he said, "Your call." I stepped into the right hallway. The concrete walls here were damp and covered with mineral deposits. The whispering came again, so soft that I thought I was imagining it. "Officer Holloway." My heart skipped a beat. I forced myself to keep going. The hallway turned left, then right. The beam of my flashlight caught outlines in the darkness. Wheelchairs stacked against the wall, their wheels rusted. An overturned IV stand. A broken nameplate that read, "Room 329. I crouched down to examine the door. The nameplate had been torn off, the numbers lying on the floor, bent metal. I shone my flashlight inside. The room was empty, but the back wall was covered with writing, scribbled with something that looked like dried rust or old blood. "Stay with me." I swallowed hard. My throat was dry. "Davis," I whispered. He stepped beside me and exhaled deeply. He scanned the shadows. "This place isn't on any map." I ran my finger over the letters. They glowed unnaturally in the flashlight beam. "That's their message." A door at the end of the hallway clicked. We both aimed our flashlights at it. The door was ajar and pale light spilled out. I approached, even though every instinct told me to turn back. But I kept going and pushed the door open. Inside was a small living room, plush armchairs, a broken coffee table, a radio on a side table that was emitting nothing but static. The whispering turned into the static from the radio. "Don't go away." Mrs. Abernathy's walker stood on the coffee table, folded up as if someone had left it there. Next to it lay her favorite knitted cardigan, its yarn thin and worn. I swallowed and reached out to pick up the cardigan. It was cold and damp with condensation. Reflexively, I wrapped it around my shoulders. The room temperature continued to drop. My breath froze on my lips. The radio crackled. "Help me." I spun around. The living room door had disappeared and been replaced by a solid wall. The only window was gone. Only the radio was still there, but now it was silent. The scarf around my shoulders tightened as if someone were gently pulling on it. I tore it away. It slipped from my hands and fell to the floor. where it formed a pile. Davis grabbed my arm. "Denise!" I turned to him. His face was pale. "We have to keep going." He nodded. We left the living room the same way we had come in, but the hallway had changed. It now led upstairs. The ceiling was lower, the walls closer. The air felt thick. The whispering followed us. "Stay, don't go." At the top, we entered a long gallery. Portraits hung on the walls. Faded photos of nursing home residents, staff, and caretakers. I recognized every face. Mrs. Abernathy in her younger years, night nurse Carter as a teenager with a fresh face, Davis himself in an old yearbook photo from the academy, and me, my graduation photo from the academy, my eyes shining, still untouched by the horrors of that night. I froze. They were watching us. Davis's flashlight danced across the picture frames. How... The radio in my jacket pocket crackled. I took it out. Headquarters. "Holloway, are you still there? The SWAT team is outside. We're not picking up your signal on the surveillance cameras." I pressed the talk button. "We're somewhere else. We have to get out of here." Noise drowned out my words. The eyes in the portrait seemed to follow us. I swallowed. A soft sigh escaped from behind the frame, like silk brushing against concrete. Then one of the portraits swung outward, revealing a dark niche. A faint glow beckoned us inside. Mrs. Abernathy's voice whispered, "This way?" Davis glanced at me. "Are you sure?" I nodded. "She wants us to find her." We stepped through the opening in the portrait into a narrow tunnel, lined with bricks, damp, smelling of earth and decay. The whispering became 1,000 voices, crying, laughing, pleading. Footsteps echoed behind us. I continued on. The tunnel curved and opened into a huge chamber, illuminated by an unearthly glow. Dozens of rocking chairs floated in the air, slowly turning in circles. On each chair sat a figure, some older, some younger, with their eyes closed and their heads bowed. Mrs. Abernathy sat in the middle, thin and translucent, humming a lullaby. I held my breath. "Ma'am," I whispered. She looked up, her eyes met mine. For a moment, she seemed grateful, relieved. Then she smiled, and the chamber shifted. The chairs swung outward, hurling the figures into the darkness. The lullaby turned into a shrill scream. I raised my gun, but Davis grabbed my arm. "No." The rocking chairs came to a halt. The figures disappeared. Mrs. Abernathy rose and floated toward us. The floor rippled like water. She held out her hand. "Stay with me," she said. My heart was pounding. I glanced at Davis. He swallowed. She came closer, the air around her rippling. "Now you understand," she whispered. "This is your home." I felt sick. "We can't." She placed a hand on my chest. The world tilted. I saw the mansion's lobby, empty and silent. The laboratories in the crawl space. The roof garden. Everything folded into this room, layered like memories. I staggered. "We have to go back." She shook her head. "You belong here." Davis stepped forward, his voice firm. "No one but you belongs her." She laughed. A sound like breaking glass. The walls of the chamber burst open, glowing lines spreading like cobwebs. The rocking chairs spun faster, a whirlwind of phantom figures. The whispering swelled to a howl. "Stay, stay, stay." I felt something brush against my mind. Images of endless corridors, of empty eyes, of time stretching so far that it lost all meaning. I shook my head, horrified. "Let's go," I said, my voice trembling. Davis and I turned toward the tunnel entrance. The chamber resisted. Gravity shifted. The floor became slippery. We slipped, but kept moving. The rocking chairs reached out for us with invisible arms. At the tunnel opening, the portrait chamber roared behind us. We rushed through and slammed the portrait back into place. The gallery reappeared. The portrait swung shut and sealed the chamber. The corridor behind it lay silent. We didn't hesitate. We ran past room 329, past the boarded-up east wing, up the sloping concrete hallway, through the salon door, which had returned to its place, and back to the familiar hallway on the third floor. The lights flickered again. Normal light bulbs, normal wiring. The whispering was gone. Davis pressed the elevator button. As we descended, I looked back. The hallway was empty, the nameplates intact, no blood, no rust, no writing on the walls. The door to room 312 was ajar, as if waiting. The elevator doors opened into the lobby. SWAT officers poured in, armed with flashbang grenades, rifles at the ready. The emergency exit was sealed. The intercom was silent. The TV commercials had switched to local news. Carter rushed over. "Officer Holloway, thank God." I nodded, my voice shaking. She's safe." Carter looked confused. "Mrs. Abernathy, she's been dead for 30 years. I swallowed. Behind me, Davis' radio crackled with new orders. I turned back to the hallway. The door to 312 closed slowly by itself. The neon tube hummed once, and then glowed steadily. I stepped forward as if in a trance, my hand on the door. The scratch marks on the carpet were fresh. The intercom crackled. "Officer Holloway, stay with me." My breath caught in my throat. I glanced at Davis. His face was pale and tense. He nodded. I should go. I pushed the door open. The room was empty except for a thin, perfectly folded blanket. On the nightstand was a single pink slipper, worn, fragile, waiting. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. I ran, Davis right beside me, as the lights in the lobby came back on. For a moment, everything was normal. SWAT guys gathered behind us, nurses gathered at the reception desk, and in the distance I could hear the hum of generators. Then I noticed that the sign on the wall said, "Room 329, not 312. I felt a chill run through me. I ran to the stairs. Davis grabbed my arm. "Wait," I shook him off. "Number." She misplaced it. He frowned, but stayed by my side. We sprinted up the stairs 2 at a time, past the second floor, our hearts pounding in our ears. On the landing on the third floor, the door to the east wing was firmly locked, no covering, no broken boards. The hallway lighting was steady, no flickering, no whispering. I swallowed. "Let's go in." He raised his rifle. "Ready." We stepped through the door into the hallway. The linoleum floor was worn. The nameplates stood in a row. 310, 311, 312, 321, 329. At 329, the door was wide open. I took a running start and rushed in. The room was empty, except for a rocking chair in the middle. The thin blanket lay folded on the bed. The water glass stood half full on the table, with beads of condensation. The beam of my flashlight fell on the floor. 2 footprints in slippers leading into the closet. I crouched down. The closet door was ajar. I pushed it open. It was dark inside. I shone my flashlight in, nothing but hanging clothes and dust. Then the whisper, "Stay." I swallowed hard. "She's here." Davis pointed his flashlight at the back of the closet. "Go." I stepped inside. The air was colder. My breath formed mist. At the other end, the wall was intact, solid plaster. I ran my fingers along it. The whisper, "Help me." I pushed. The wall gave way, revealing a crawl space. I shone the light inside, nothing but concrete and pipes. Then I saw it. A small door in the floor, made of metal, with rusty hinges. The bolt was broken. I released the bolt. The door swung open with a creak on its heavy hinges. A shaft led into the pitch-black depths. A faint glow emanated from below. Davis peered inside. "What is that?" I swallowed. "She wants us to go down there." He hesitated. Then, "Cover me." I aimed my lamp at the opening while he climbed down the ladder, each rung echoing. The shaft was narrow and damp. When he reached the bottom, he landed and shone his lamp into a low tunnel. I climbed after him, my boots clanking. The tunnel walls were made of bricks and damp. Water dripped from the ceiling. The glow in front of us pulsed green. Then I heard a whispering voice. "This way." We continued on. The tunnel turned and opened into a room beneath the mansion. The glow came from bioluminescent mold on the walls. In the middle was a shallow pool of water, black and still. Kneeling at the edge was Mrs. Abernathy, her hands submerged in the water, humming the lullaby. Her shawl lay over her shoulders, her slippers floating on the surface. I swallowed. "Ma'am." She stood up, water dripping from her hands. She turned around. Her eyes were empty. She smiled sadly. "You've come." Davis stepped forward. "We're taking you back." She shook her head. "I can't go." Her voice echoed as if from afar. "You need me." She pointed to the pond. I ducked. The surface of the water rippled for no apparent reason. Dozens of faces were reflected in it. Residents, staff, officials, floating directly below, their eyes open, their mouths moving in silent pleas. I glanced at Davis. "They're trapped." She nodded. "It was here long before the mansion was built. A gathering place, a home." I swallowed. "We have to get help." She approached the pool. The mold on the walls glowed brighter. The whispering grew louder. "Stay, stay." Davis stepped between us. "Number, we're leaving." She sighed. "Then leave me with them." She reached into the pool. The water rose and formed phantom arms that reached out for her. The faces beneath the surface pushed upward, their mouths opening in silent screams. I felt bile rising in my throat. "Denise," Davis whispered. I shook my head, not without her. I turned to Mrs. Abernathy. "We're staying, together, but you're coming with us." She closed her eyes. The water receded. The mold faded. The tunnel lights flickered. The whispering stopped. She stood up, pale and trembling. I held out my hand to her. She took it. Her skin was ice cold. We turned to climb back up. The ladder was slippery. Davis pulled Mrs. Abernathy up first, then me. At the top, the closet door closed behind us. The crawl space was silent. We climbed up to room 329. The rocking chair was still. The slippers were next to my feet. Mrs. Abernathy stood in the middle, breathing shallowly. I stepped toward the door. It opened onto the hallway. The lights were buzzing normally. Carter stood at the nurse's station, staring at us with wide eyes. "Officer Holloway? Officer Davis? Where?" I led Mrs. Abernathy forward. "We found her." Carter rushed to her and knelt beside her. "Oh, Mrs. Abernathy." I exhaled. "Let's take her to the infirmary." As we walked away, I glanced back at room 329. The door fell shut. The nameplate read 312. I froze. Davis grabbed my arm. "Come on." I stepped forward. The hallway was quiet and empty. The whispering returned, soft, insistent. "Stay. With me." I swallowed. The mansion seemed to be alive around us. Walls moved, pipes sighed. Reality bent. I realized what was happening. We hadn't saved her. We had joined her. I rushed through the hallway door with Davis right behind me, adrenaline coursing through my veins. The lobby beyond was silent. The SWAT team had withdrawn on orders, and only Carter and 2 assistants stood pale beside the reception desk. They had called paramedics. Stretchers were ready. But I had no time for protocol. "Where is she?" I asked, my voice echoing. Carter pointed tremulously to the door leading to the east wing. She went back in, officer. We tried to stop her." I looked at Davis. He shrugged. "We're following her." We sprinted down the narrow hallway, past room numbers that twisted and shifted under the harsh neon lights. 310, 311, 312, 329-3, 12-3, 29-3, 12. The walls seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting in time with our footsteps. The flickering lights cast shadows that flitted around the edges of our vision. At 312, the door was ajar. I reached for the handle and pushed, hard. The room was silent. The thin blanket lay folded on the bed. The water glass was empty. There were no footprints except ours. Everything was exactly as we had left it hours ago. I stepped inside and shone the flashlight around. The closet door was closed. It was colder in the room than in the hallway. My breath formed little clouds. I swallowed. "Denise," Davis said quietly. He stood in the doorway, holding his rifle low. I looked at him. "She's here." He frowned. "Then where is she?" I went to the bed and put a hand on the blanket. A whisper reached me. "Underneath." My heart was pounding. I glanced at the closet. The door seemed to be pulsing. I pressed my palm against it. It swung inward. The crawl space behind it yawned. I shone my flashlight inside, dry concrete, a broken ladder, nothing else. I climbed down, Davis right behind me. The air was musty and claustrophobic. I reached the floor and swung my flashlight around. The tunnel curved, the walls glistening with the same phosphorescent mold. The pool chamber was to our left, now silent. No rocking chairs, no Mrs. Abernathy, just the water, completely still. I stepped toward the pool. The whispering had disappeared. The radio in my pocket crackled. SWAT asking for status. I cut off the radio. This place obeyed only its own logic. I shone my flashlight into the water. Pale figures floated beneath the surface. Indistinct shapes that moved when I blinked. I knelt at the edge and dipped a gloved finger in. The water rippled, and a face pressed against the underside of the surface. The face of an older man, his eyes wide with silent fear. I flinched. "Davis," I hissed, "you're still here." He pointed his lamp at the opposite wall. There, scrawled in dark letters, were the words, "Find us." My pulse quickened. I turned toward the tunnel. The whispering returned, a chorus of voices. "Find us. Save us. Stay with us." I swallowed. "We have to go deeper." He hesitated. "We could just leave." I shook my head. "We can't." We pushed on through the tunnel. The ground sloped downward until our boots were soaked with moisture. The glow of mold grew more intense, revealing side passages that branched off like veins. The whispering voices came from all directions. At a fork, the left passage was narrower, the right wider but darker. I closed my eyes and listened. There was quiet sobbing from the left, a soft humming from the right. "Which one?" Davis asked. I swallowed. "Left. Someone's crying." We turned into the narrow passageway. The walls closed in on us, and I ran my hand over the bricks. The sobbing grew louder, childlike, intermittent. The tunnel led to a tiny cell. Stone walls, no windows, a single rusty cot. On the bed lay a fragile figure in a hospital gown, curled up like a fetus. I shone my lamp. The figure stirred. A young woman, her eyes open, tears running down her cheeks. She looked up, her lips open in a silent plea. "Ma'am?" I whispered. She stood up, her legs wobbly, thin as a shadow. The buzzing mingled with her sobs. Two emotions intertwined. She stepped forward, ghostly pale, her hair sticking to her head. Her eyes were dark wells. I can't find my mother," she said in a trembling voice. "They won't let me go." My throat tightened. "We'll get you out of here." She shook her head. "They won't let you." Behind me, Davis shone his flashlight on the cell door. It was gone, replaced by solid stone. The tunnel behind it was gone. I looked at the woman. "Who?" She swallowed. "All of us." She made a sweeping gesture. "We're trapped. We called 911, but no one came." The whispering voices grew louder. "Help us. Stay with us." My radio crackled. Static. Then Carter's voice. "Officer Holloway, are you there?" I turned off the radio again. Not now. The woman went to the cot and lifted a stained blanket. Underneath was a bundle. Another child, a boy, his eyes closed, breathing shallowly. He looked like he was sleeping. She smiled sadly. "My brother." I knelt down. "We'll take you both with us." She shook her head. "No. You have to stay. You need someone who's awake." The mold on the walls pulsed. The whisper, "Stay, stay." I glanced at Davis. His face was grim. "We can't leave her behind," I said. He swallowed. "Then we'll stay." The woman nodded, relief mirrored on her face. She stepped back and disappeared into the shadows. The boy stirred and also disappeared, leaving the cot empty. The tunnel lighting flickered. The doors to the water hall reappeared behind us. The whispering turned into cheerful laughter. I stood up. "That way." I pointed. Davis hesitated, then went ahead. We stepped into the chamber. The water lay still. The rocking chairs had returned. Empty, silent. The passage back to the ladder yawned at us. I stepped onto it. The whisper, "Thank you." I climbed up, Davis behind me. At the top, the hatch closed. We hoisted ourselves into room 312. The hallway lights hummed normally. We didn't say a word as we retraced our way through the mansion. Down the hallway, through the lobby, out into the night air. Carter hurried over. "They're gone?" she asked, her eyes wide. I nodded. "All of them." She blinked. "But the wing is still locked. We can't get in." I glanced back at the dark windows. "Some doors can be opened from the inside," she frowned. "Mrs. Abernathy, I shook my head. "She's at home." Davis put his arm around my shoulders. "Come on, let's report this." I walked past the patrol car to the street. The mansion disappeared behind me, a silent guardian in the trees. The whisper floated in the wind. "Stay. With us." I stopped. The night was silent. The cicadas chirped. Reason whispered to me that it was all over. But another voice, the one inside me, asked, "When the living are gone, who will remain to remember?" I turned around once more. The window on the top floor glowed faintly, just one pane. A figure stood there watching us. I exhaled, then I walked on. I rushed into the hallway, Davis behind me, adrenaline burning in every fiber of my body. The hallway lights were now humming steadily. No flickering, no whispering. But I could still feel their presence pressing down on me from the walls. Every scratch on the linoleum floor seemed fresh, as if the building itself had recorded our footsteps. We moved as one toward the east wing. The air was stifling and smelled of disinfectant and damp plaster. At the intersection, the nameplates changed again before my eyes. 328, 300, 29, 330. I shook my head. Reality here was fluid. I dared to glance at Davis. His jaw was clenched, his rifle at the ready, all his senses on high alert. The door to room 330 was ajar. A faint light shone out. I pushed forward, my heart pounding. Inside, the fluorescent tube hummed softly. The glow came from dozens of pills scattered across the floor, phosphorescent in the dark. An open medical file lay on the bed. Mrs. Abernathy's vital signs from 1978. Heart rate, 40. Breaths, 8. Below that was a scribbled note. They come back at night. I slammed the file shut. This is where lives are archived, I whispered. Davis looked around the room. Let's keep going. We stepped out into the hallway. The whispering grew louder again, soft and insistent. Find the others. I swallowed. You called 911. We're here. He nodded. Next wing? I pointed down the long corridor to the door of the west wing. It was dimly lit. No one used this wing at night. We entered. The carpet here was thick and muffled our footsteps. Portraits of long-dead administrative employees hung on the walls. Their gazes seemed to follow us. At the other end, a tarnished plaque read, Staff Room. The door handle turned in my hand. The room was empty, except for a rotary dial telephone on the table with the receiver off the hook. The dial tone rang in my ears. I picked up the receiver. Silence, then a click. A single sentence was whispered through the line. You're in the basement. I froze. In the basement? This area had been sealed off for decades. Davis' flashlight beam fell on the wall clock. It was running backwards, the second hand turning counterclockwise. He looked at me. Time has stopped here. I put down the receiver. Basement. He exhaled. Let's find them. We went back to the main staircase. The door was closed, even though we had left it wide open. I pushed against it, and it gave way, revealing the darkness beyond. The stairwell lighting had failed. I switched on the second beam of my flashlight. The concrete steps led down into the darkness. The deeper we descended, the colder the air became, each breath visible. The walls dripped with moisture. A faint scratching sound came from below, like nails on concrete. On the first landing, the green emergency exit sign flashed. Below it, footprints led from the stairs to a maintenance hatch in the wall. The hatch was open, and a ladder led into complete darkness. I glanced at Davis. He nodded. I climbed down, each rung damp with condensation until I landed on hard-packed earth. The hatch fell shut with a dull thud. We stood in a narrow tunnel with a brick vault and a low ceiling. Around us, we heard whispering, "Help us. Find us." The beam of my flashlight caught outlines in the darkness. Old hospital beds, rusty stretchers, wheelchairs piled up like corpses. Shadows flitted back and forth at the edge. We followed the tunnel forward. The floor sloped down, water collecting around our boots. Mold glowed faintly green on the bricks. The whispers turned into sobs and indistinct cries. "Where are you?" "Officer, please." At a bend, the tunnel opened into a vaulted room. Pipes ran above us, dripping water into shallow trenches. In the middle stood a row of padded cells with thick, locked steel doors. Each door had a nameplate: Carter, Davis, Holloway, Nurse Jenkins, janitor, and at the end, an empty plate. A shiver ran down my spine. "What is this?" Davis approached the first cell. Through the crack, I saw a huddled figure. I shone my flashlight inside. Carter's uniform, empty, no body. The door rattled. The whisper, "Open. Me." I shook my head. Number. He went to the next cell. Davis's own name. The door creaked. Inside, the stretcher was empty. The restraints had been removed. The whisper, "Find her." My heart was pounding. "We have to get out of here." He shook his head, his voice tense. "Not until we've freed her." I swallowed. Reason screamed at me to leave, but the echoes of fear, the cries for help, held me fast. I approached the empty panel. The door was locked tight, no handle, no keyhole. The whisper, "Here." I pressed my palm against the steel. It grew warm under my glove and pulsed like a heartbeat. The door shook. A rust stain formed a handprint. Then the panel swung inward on silent hinges, revealing a view into the darkness. I glanced at Davis. "After you." He nodded and stepped through. I followed him. The cell was empty. No floor, just an abyss into the darkness. The whispering voice, "Climb." I peered over the edge. I couldn't see the floor. The sobbing came from below. Against my instincts, I climbed down the ladder attached to the wall. My boots splashed in the cold water on the floor. The chamber opened into a huge underground hall. Arches disappeared into the shadows. In the middle stood rows of hospital beds, empty except for neatly folded blankets. At the other end was a lone door marked Exit. Light was shining in from underneath. But between us and the exit stood figures. Dozens of them. Emaciated figures in nightgowns, their eyes wide open and their faces pale. They drifted forward, arms outstretched. The whisper, "Stay with us." I swallowed. "Davis." He raised his rifle. "We're getting them out." We moved forward. The figures didn't speak. Their lips moved silently. When I reached the first one, I saw a name tag on her nightgown. Mrs. Abernathy. But her face was younger, her eyes sad. I reached out my hand to her. She passed through me like mist. The next figure wore Carter's name tag. Then Davis saw his own tag on another figure. My heart skipped a beat. These were echoes, images of all the people who had ever called this place home. Behind them, the exit door glowed. We moved toward it, pushing our way through the crowd. The whispering grew louder. "Don't go." I reached the door and pushed it open. It swung open, revealing a sunny courtyard. Morning light, dew on the grass, birds singing. The figures hesitated on the threshold. The whispering, "Go." We stepped through. The door closed behind us. The courtyard was empty. The nursing home stood silently, its windows dark. A maintenance crew arrived and was surprised to find the doors open. Davis and I looked at each other. "You're free," I whispered. He nodded. "Let's go home." I turned around. In the window above the east wing, I saw a figure watching us. Tiny, frail, her hand pressed against the glass. The silhouette of Mrs. Abernathy. She smiled and disappeared. The road from Crestwood curved gently, flanked by bare trees swaying in the morning breeze. The sun warmed the windshield, but it did nothing to ease the cold in my chest. Davis hadn't spoken since we left. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. I watched the silent landscape slide past. Green pastures, a lone windmill, birds scattering as we passed. Everything felt too alive, too normal after what we'd seen. "We should file a report," I said, though my voice cracked halfway through. Davis didn't respond at first. Then, with a hollow breath, "What would we even write?" Haunted facility expelled its ghosts through a door marked Exit? I almost laughed. Almost. We pulled into the station lot. The place looked exactly as we had left it. Coffee still steaming in mugs, papers clipped to dispatch boards. Familiar, safe. But I didn't step out right away. Something tugged at me. I turned and looked back down the road. I couldn't see the manor anymore, but I could feel it. Like a radio station just beyond the dial, still whispering, still there. Davis grabbed his gear and paused at the door. "You coming?" I nodded, but something made me hesitate. I reached into my vest pocket and pulled out the tag I had taken, Mrs. Abernathy. I hadn't remembered doing it, but there it was, pressed between my fingers like a farewell note. The fabric was thin, soft, worn. I stared at it for a long moment before slipping it into my notebook. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake, window open, letting the air flow through the room. I kept thinking about those figures, how they didn't beg or scream. Just watched, just waited. As if they weren't angry, as if they were lonely. The silence in my apartment was too complete, too final. I turned on the radio for background noise, but every now and then the static would spike, a voice trying to bleed through. Around 3 a.m., I heard a knock. I froze. It came again, soft, deliberate. Not the loud bang of panic, but a patient rhythm. I opened the door. No one. Just the empty hallway, flickering light above the stairwell, and something on the floor. A folder, yellowed, water-stained. The words Crestwood Intake Records stamped across the top. I brought it inside. Inside were pages, hundreds of them. Dates going back to the 1940s, names I didn't recognize, but one stuck out. Eleanor Abernathy, admitted 1964. Deceased 1967. Cause of death undisclosed. I flipped the page, then another, my own name, then Davis's, both written in handwriting that didn't match the rest of the forms. Next to each was a field marked Departure Status, Pending. The folder slipped from my hands. Outside, the wind had picked up. Leaves blew in spiral patterns across the sidewalk, and the temperature dropped, though the calendar insisted it was May. My phone buzzed. A new message. Blocked number. We're still waiting. I stared at it, pulse pounding. Then the lights flickered once, twice. My reflection in the window didn't move with me. For a second, it stood still, lips parting, eyes wide, like it was watching me. I backed away and closed the blinds. The next morning, Davis didn't show up for roll call. No call, no text, nothing. I drove to his house. The front door was ajar. Inside, everything looked untouched. Keys on the hook, breakfast plate still warm. His wallet sat on the counter. Only one thing was missing. His patrol uniform, and the Crestwood tag I'd seen him put into his glove box. I checked the mirrors, the closets, the backyard, nothing. But in the corner of the bedroom, drawn in chalk on the wall, were the words, "Some doors stay open." That night I dreamed of the corridor again, the arches, the beds, the empty eyes watching. Only this time, the exit door was gone. In its place stood Mrs. Abernathy, no longer young, no longer sad. She simply said, "You left, but you're not free." When I woke, the name tag was on my chest. Still damp, still real.